Naruto, advancing through pure effort in Konoha. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Distribution. 5 days later. In the afternoon. After Qingming performed the shadow clone technique again, a sense of enlightenment suddenly emerged in his mind. Suddenly, Qingming knew that his shadow clone technique had been promoted. He opened the panel and took a look. As expected, the proficiency behind the shadow clone technique changed from LV0, 99/100, to LV1, 1/200. After carefully comprehending for a moment, Qingming performed the shadow clone technique again. Bang! A cloud of chakra smoke dispersed. A figure exactly like him appeared in front of him. If the shadow clones he split at LV0 were unstable and short-lived, then after being promoted to LV1, these shortcomings were gone. Qingming could clearly feel that the shadow clone in front of him could last for a long time and had a certain ability to withstand blows, and the stability was quite good. Qingming looked at the Sharingan in the other's eye socket and asked, "Can you use your Sharingan?" The shadow clone carefully felt it for a moment, looked around, and finally nodded and said, "It can be used, but it consumes more chakra than the original body." Really? After a pause, Qingming drew out his dagger and said, "Come on, let's fight." "Okay," the shadow clone responded and also drew out the dagger from his waist. The next moment, the two moved together, and the two daggers collided with each other, making a crisp metal collision sound. Not only that, Qingming even saw sparks between the blades. It's no wonder that the Sharingan and the Byakugan can't tell the real from the fake. These transformed weapons are so real, let alone the core of ninjutsu. Where's the person? After a stalemate, the two changed their moves at the same time and began to use their swordsmanship with all their strength. The sound of ding-dong rang out one after another, and the two daggers kept colliding between the two. Qingming and the shadow clone did not use ninjutsu and illusion, but simply competed in swordsmanship. At first, the shadow clone could still compete with him, but as time went on, Qingming gradually gained the upper hand. It's not that the shadow clone's swordsmanship is not as good as his, but as the battle progresses, his swordsmanship proficiency is constantly improving. Although the shadow clone has also improved, it is far less fast than him. Therefore, he naturally gained the upper hand. It can be seen from this that the proficiency panel should be bound to his soul, otherwise the shadow clone's swordsmanship should also be improved synchronously. In this case, the effect of using the shadow clone to brush proficiency will be greatly reduced. However, this point does not need to be considered for the time being. Now he is facing a lack of chakra, not a lack of time, and there is no need to use the shadow clone to brush proficiency. Unless one day he can capture a tailed beast and practice the chakra absorption technique to the point where he can extract the tailed beast's chakra, otherwise chakra will always take precedence over time. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and Qingming concentrated on dealing with the shadow clone in front of him. However, until the shadow clone collapsed, he still did not defeat the opponent. It can be seen that in terms of melee combat ability, the shadow clone is not much worse than him. The only shortcoming is probably that the ability to withstand blows is average. Of course, there is also the consumption of chakra, which is far greater than the original body. Because the shadow clone is originally a physical clone made of chakra, every move consumes chakra, especially when fighting, the consumption is even greater. This can also explain why few people use this technique for frontal combat, because it is completely not worth the loss. Fortunately, Qingming did not intend to use this technique for combat. He practiced this technique just to cover up his tracks. In the past few days, in order not to waste Kainai's chakra battery, he had to go back and forth between the cave and the base camp every day. Not to mention the waste of time, it is also particularly easy to be noticed. Now, with the shadow clone technique, he can let the shadow clone stay at the base camp and stay there for a long time. This reduces the number of trips and is not easy to be discovered. In addition, if something happens at the base camp, the shadow clone can also quickly transmit the information back by releasing the ninjutsu. In this way, Qingming is not afraid of missing anything. Maybe it's time to capture more prisoners. Thinking this in his heart, Qingming quickly packed up his things and then used the shadow clone technique again. Looking at the newly appeared shadow clone, Qingming said, "You stay here next time and notify me in time if there is anything." "Okay," The shadow clone made an okay gesture to him. Seeing this, Qingming smiled and then quietly left the base camp. Of course, he was not going to capture prisoners. This would have to wait until his next mission. The place he was going to now was the cave space. Today's chakra has not been harvested yet, so he had to go there quickly. After running all the way, Qingming finally arrived at the target location near dusk. After carefully observing the surroundings and finding nothing unusual, Qingming carefully cleared the traces he left behind and then drilled into the cave. After more than 10 breaths, Qingming came to the depths of the cave and met Kainai again. Unlike a few days ago, Kainai was much quieter now. He didn't play any tricks when he saw him, but the hatred in his eyes remained. Qingming looked at the other party and said, "You know, don't resist." After that, he formed seals with both hands and performed the ninjutsu, chakra absorption technique. A ball of chakra wrapped his right hand, and Qingming went straight forward and pressed it on the top of his head. The next moment, a steady stream of chakra flowed out of Kainai's body, passed through Qingming's right hand, and entered his body. After more than 20 seconds, Qingming retracted his palm. He opened the panel and took a look, and the chakra increased by almost 3,000 points. Qingming nodded with satisfaction, then took out 3 soldiers' food pills and stuffed them into Kainai's mouth. Kainai didn't say anything nonsense, and started to bite them. But that expression, no matter how you look at it, it looks like he can't wait to eat Qingming. Qingming didn't care much about this. As long as the other party can provide him with chakra, it doesn't matter what he thinks in his heart. At the same time, Qingming was also glad that Kainai was not spoiled by his family. Although his personality was a little eccentric, he was not a person who gave up easily. Otherwise, he would have no way to catch the other party. Of course, Qingming also knew that the other party insisted on refining chakra to kill time and wait for an opportunity. Unfortunately, he would not be able to wait for this opportunity. If he had not learned the shadow clone technique, the other party might have the chance to escape. But now, he was personally guarding here, and the other party would not be able to leave no matter what. However, I cannot give up the other party's hope. If the other party gives up and stops refining chakra, I will be the one who suffers in the end. With this thought, Qingming left the cave space as usual. However, he did not return to the base camp this time, but stayed under the cave, found a place there, and practiced the reflection heart technique by himself. Chapter 102 starting again. While practicing the reflection heart technique, Qingming also began to rethink the distribution of chakra. Now that he has mastered the shadow clone technique, the extra 2,000 chakra points need to be redistributed. As for why he did not continue to practice the shadow clone technique, there are 2 reasons. One is that the level 1 shadow clone technique is enough for the time being, and there is no need to continue to waste chakra to upgrade. The second is that during the mission, for his own safety, his chakra is always running at a high level. Practicing other skills will not produce additional consumption. But the shadow clone technique is different. The shadow clones it creates will evenly divide the chakra of the main body. At this time, even if he does nothing and immediately cancels the ninjutsu, Qingming will not get all the chakra, but will consume 10% of the chakra of all the shadow clones. What is the concept? If Qingming maintains the chakra in his body at about 8,000 points, and then uses the shadow clone technique to create a shadow clone, then, when canceling it, 10% of the chakra of the shadow clone will be consumed, that is, 400 points. If 2 shadow clones are created, this number will become more than 500. The more shadow clones are created, the greater the loss. Without a doubt, this is unacceptable to Qingming. Therefore, this technique can only be practiced when he is resting, and his chakra does not need to be kept running at a high level. In the next period of time, he will be on missions and will definitely not have the opportunity to practice. Therefore, the additional 2,000 chakra points must be redistributed. After thinking for a while, Qingming decided to use 1,500 of them on the practice of the reflection of the heart technique, which can allow him to gain an additional 9 points of proficiency. In this way, counting the 21 points of proficiency that can be obtained by the original 3,500 points of chakra allocated to it, that is 30 points of proficiency. And every 3 points of proficiency in the reflection of the heart technique can increase the evolution of his Sharingan by 1 point, and 30 points is 10 points. In this way, plus the consumption of 600 points of chakra, the 3 points of evolution accumulated by maintaining the opening of the Sharingan for 15 hours. The evolution of his Sharingan will increase to 13 points every day. As for the remaining 500 chakra points, Qingming plans to use them on the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, which can give him an extra 6 proficiency points. Counting the 10 proficiency points that can be obtained by the 850 chakra points originally allocated to it, that is 16 points. In addition, the chakra originally allocated to the blinking body technique can also be reallocated. Since it has been perfected, there is no need to continue to consume chakra for practice. Therefore, Qingming plans to allocate these chakras to the chakra absorption technique to further speed up its upgrade. In addition, there are chakras used in the 3 skills of Konoha-style sword technique, Uchiha-style sword technique, and ninja tool throwing. Qingming plans to allocate them all to the new skill, swordsmanship. In this way, there is no need to worry about the lack of chakra for swordsmanship. As for the chakra originally allocated to the magic, Sharingan technique and illusion, Sharingan, as well as the healing technique, Qingming does not intend to use them. So, let's summarize. That's 10,000 chakra points, of which 5,000 points were used in the reflection of the heart technique, which can gain 30 points of proficiency every day. 1,300 points were used in the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, which can gain 16 points of proficiency every day. 1,700 points were evenly divided between the magic, shackle technique and the illusion, Sharingan, which can gain 10 points of proficiency every day. That's 8,000 chakra points. Of the remaining 2,000 points, 600 points were consumed by the healing technique, which can gain 7 points of proficiency every day. Another 600 points were used to maintain the opening of the Sharingan, which can allow him to gain 3 points of Sharingan's evolution. The remaining 800 chakra points were shared by the chakra absorption technique and the sword technique. Neither of them consumes much chakra, and 800 chakra points are enough for them to gain 20 points of proficiency. So far, 10,000 chakra points have been distributed. But this is only part of it, and there is also a chakra battery to supply him with chakra. Qingming intends to put all of these chakras into the practice of fire style, Phoenix Fire technique and reflection heart technique. Only in this way can he complete the change of form and nature of fire attribute chakra in the shortest time, and then develop the second chakra attribute. At the same time, it can also make his Sharingan complete the evolution as soon as possible and reach the level of 3 Magatama. With this thought, Qingming turned his head and looked at the depths of the passage, as if he saw Kayana, who was practicing in anger in the innermost part of the cave. After a long time, Qingming retracted his gaze and continued his practice. In a blink of an eye, 2 days passed. The holiday is over, and it's time to perform the mission again. This time, his mission is still patrolling, the location is still the same area, and most of his teammates are also his teammates from last time. This is not a coincidence, but a deliberate arrangement from above. As for the reason, it is very simple. Familiar environment and familiar teammates can make ninjas more powerful. Therefore, generally speaking, ninjas will not receive tasks with too much difference in a relatively fixed period of time. For example, the last time he was on patrol, the next time he was lurking and infiltrating. Of course, this is not absolute. Just like when he just returned to the battlefield a month ago, the first time he performed was still a patrol mission, but the second time he received an order for emergency support. However, there are generally only 2 reasons for this situation. One is that there are not enough people and they urgently need to pull people to fill the line, and the other is that your ability can really come in handy and you need to solve the problem. His emergency support that time belongs to the first type. At that time, the rock ninja was coming fiercely, and the base camp could not withdraw extra manpower for a while, so he and some ninjas who were resting could only be urgently sent to the front line. Qingming still remembers the cruelty of that battle. Fortunately, it only happened once. Back to this mission, Qingming glanced at the ninjas in the team and found that there were many fewer Jinan. Think about it, the war lasted for such a long time, even if there were more Jinan. They could not withstand such consumption. And without enough Jinan to serve as cannon fodder, then the Chunin can only make up for it. Therefore, it is foreseeable that the next battle will become more and more brutal, and the death rate of the Chunin, the backbone of the village, will also reach a peak. And when one day, one side can no longer hold on, the war will almost be over. Everyone, set off. Just as Qingming was thinking, the leader in front gave the order to set off. Then, the group began to move forward along the established route and rushed to the mission location. Chapter 103 Opportunity. At the same time, in the cave space, Qingming took his palm away from Kayanai's head, fed him 3 ration pills as usual, and after ensuring that he had enough nutrition to refine chakra, he returned to the entrance of the cave. Looking at the direction of the base camp in the distance, Qingming murmured in a low voice, calculating the time. It seems that the shadow clone should also set off. That's right, Qingming, who followed the main force, was just one of his shadow clones. Originally, Qingming planned to go there in person, but considering that there was no danger on the road from the base camp to here, he simply didn't waste that time. After staying outside for a while and absorbing some fresh air, Qingming tiptoed back to the cave. He found a place at random, sat cross-legged, and then began to use the 3,000 chakras he had just obtained to practice the reflection of the heart technique. Originally, according to his plan, these 3,000 chakras were to be divided into 2, used to practice the reflection of the heart technique and the fire style, Phoenix fire technique. But he is now an illegal resident, and practicing the fire style, Phoenix fire technique here is likely to cause trouble, so he can only give up temporarily. In fact, it is not just now, but also the past 2 days. This has led to the number of times he practiced the reflection heart technique far exceeding the plan, while the fire style, Phoenix fire technique has stagnated. However, this is not important. Qingming is not a rigid person. After the shadow clone comes, he can appear openly and squarely, and he can completely make up for the fire style, Phoenix fire technique. Anyway, as long as the general progress is carried out according to the plan, there is no need to worry about the distribution of chakra every day. Other skills follow the same principle. In a flash, several hours passed. It was near dusk. A figure appeared silently at the entrance of the cave, looked around, then pushed aside the weeds and jumped in. Below, Qingming opened his eyes suddenly. The next moment, a familiar figure appeared in front of him. It was none other than his shadow clone. The two did not speak, but just looked at each other, and then the shadow clone released the ninjutsu. Bang! A cloud of chakra smoke dispersed, and the shadow clone disappeared. Along with it, a small amount of chakra and the other party's memories of the past 2 days. Qingming closed his eyes for a moment, and after browsing the other party's memories, he performed the shadow clone technique again, splitting a shadow clone and quietly left the cave. The shadow clone replaced him and became the new guard. At this point, the two completed the exchange of identities, and Qingming could finally appear outside openly. There was nothing much to say about the days that followed. In addition to eating, sleeping and patrolling, Qingming practiced, and maintained a frequency of once a day to squeeze Kainai's chakra. As for the enemy, the area he was responsible for did not appear, but there were several battles in other teams, and he also supported once. Unfortunately, there were more people that time, and he could not kidnap the other party without anyone noticing, so he could only bear the pain and kill the other party. Because of this, this mission is almost over, and his chakra battery is still only Kainai. Just when he was considering whether to take advantage of the rest time tomorrow to go to the front battlefield and capture a few sand ninjas, the opportunity suddenly came, this afternoon. In the forest, Qingming was on his last patrol. Suddenly, a ninja dog came running from a distance, and after approaching, it braked suddenly and stopped in front of him. Qingming recognized the other party. It was the summoning beast of the squad leader Toshiro Yukio, Kiaya. The other party came in a hurry, and there must be an order to convey. Sure enough, before Qingming opened his mouth to ask, it said very quickly, Team 312, Lord Yukio ordered you to rush to Area E12 immediately. Team 108 has been attacked and needs your support. Team 312 is the internal number of the team led by Qingming. Area E12 is the patrol area of Team 108, which is adjacent to Area E11 they defend. It was normal for the other party to ask for reinforcements when they were attacked. Qingming didn't waste any words and replied directly, okay, I got it, Kiaya, you can go back and report. Wolf hearing this, Kiaya called out and said, hurry up, there seem to be a lot of enemies over there. After that, it ran back in a flash. Looking at the other parties disappearing back, Qingming murmured, it's good that there are a lot of enemies. Without any hesitation, Qingming immediately took out a whistle and blew it. In less than a minute, his 3 subordinates rushed over. One of them asked directly, Captain, what happened? Qingming didn't waste any words and immediately told them that the 108th team was attacked and the team leader asked them for reinforcements. Then, he directly ordered, pack up your equipment immediately, let's go. In fact, there was nothing to pack. Everyone was fully armed when they came out to perform the mission, so they set off quickly. However, before they arrived at Area E12, they were attacked by the Sand Ninja. Wind escape, Konoha technique. In the forest, Qingming and others were running fast, and a low shout suddenly came from the front. The next moment, a gust of wind suddenly appeared, blowing towards them from far away. The trees along the way seemed to be attacked by some sharp blades, with branches broken and leaves falling, which was miserable. Seeing this scene, Qingming and others hurriedly retreated. Finally, after everything returned to calm, Qingming saw the person who attacked. This person was about 20 years old, thin, with a pair of triangular eyes, a bit cold temperament, and a giant fan in his hand. If Qingming was not mistaken, it should be the unique ninja tool of Sand Village, the 3-star fan. Using this to perform wind escape ninjutsu can effectively enhance the power of ninjutsu. It's just that I don't know how many stars the other party opened when performing the wind escape, Konoha technique just now, Qingming thought in his heart, and at the same time glanced at the other 3 people. That's right, in addition to this thin man, there are 3 Sand Village chunin in the field. One of them had colorful paint on his face and a huge cylindrical object on his back, which was a bit similar to the outfit of Kenjiro in later generations. But Qingming saw the same family emblem on Kainai's clothes. Obviously, these 2 people are from the same family. This made Qingming's eyes light up. He was worried about how to get Kainai to hand over the puppet secret technique. With this person, maybe he could find a breakthrough. However, these are all later stories. Qingming paid a little attention to the other party and then shifted his attention to the remaining 2 people. Compared with the thin man and the puppeteer, these 2 people are much more ordinary. One is 17 or 18 years old, with a strong body, and you can see that he has practiced physical skills well. The other is in his early 20s. She is a rare female ninja in the ninja world, and it is unknown what she is good at. There will be another update in the evening. Chapter 104 Fight. While Qingming was observing the other party, the 4 Sand Ninjas were also observing him. There was no other way. Who made the Sharingan so famous in the ninja world? As soon as he stood here, the 3 teammates became invisible. After a moment of confrontation, the thin man in the Sand Village side said, "Sharingan?" A ninja from the Uchiha clan. Hearing this, Qingming immediately put on a proud expression and asked back, "Who are you?" There was no awe of the Jonin in his words. That's right, the thin man in front of him is a Jonin. As for whether he is a special Jonin or a real Jonin, Qingming doesn't know. Humph. Arrogant. Hearing Qingming's tone, the thin man snorted coldly and said, "Boy, let me let you know that the one who killed you was the Sand Village Jonin, Sand Wind." While speaking, he had already opened the 3-star fan in his hand, and at the same time completed the seal, and once again performed the ninjutsu, wind style, Konoha jutsu. The next moment, a frenzied storm carrying countless vacuum blades blew towards Qingming. Qingming narrowed his eyes slightly, and the Sharingan inside him spun rapidly. At the same time, he said without turning his head, "Leave the opponent's Jonin to me, and you can deal with the other 3. After saying that, regardless of whether the 3 subordinates heard it clearly, he drew the short sword at his waist and rushed forward against the storm. Although the vacuum blades are invisible and intangible, they will always leave some traces when they come into contact with the air. It may be difficult for ordinary people to detect, but Qingming, who has a double Magatama Sharingan, can clearly observe these traces. In this way, coupled with the LV5 swordsmanship, even in the storm, Qingming can still accurately cut those vacuum blades. The sound of ding-dong rang out one after another, and Qingming blocked the attacks of those vacuum blades while rapidly approaching Shafen. Seeing this scene, Shafen's pupils trembled slightly, and the right hand holding the fan pulled hard, and the 3-star fan opened a corner again, revealing the second spot. At the same time, he quickly completed the seal, injected a large amount of wind chakra into the fan, and then swung it fiercely, shouting, "Wind style, great scythe weasel technique." The next moment, a stronger gust of wind came than before, and the vacuum blades mixed in it were also more dense. However, Qingming was still not afraid at all, facing the wind, waving the short sword in his hand, and no vacuum blade could get within 1 meter of him. At the same time, the battle of the other 6 people also began. However, because the battle here was too intense, they all moved the battlefield to the periphery. Qingming took the time to glance over there, and did not find that either side had an absolute advantage. Therefore, the balance of victory and defeat would ultimately depend on the battle on their side. With this thought in mind, Qingming concentrated his mind and rushed forward faster. Seeing this, Shafen did not hesitate at all, and immediately opened the three-star fan completely, and then began to seal, as if preparing to perform a more powerful ninjutsu. However, this time Qingming did not give him a chance. Seeing that the distance was almost close, Qingming immediately performed the instant body technique, and his speed increased sharply. If ordinary people do this, it is a deadly act. But Qingming is different. He has two Magatama Sharingan, which can rely on his strong insight to avoid those rapidly flying vacuum blades in time. Therefore, after paying some price, Qingming passed through the coverage of wind style, great side that Ichi and appeared in front of Shafen. At this time, the opponent has not completed the preparations for the ninjutsu. Facing the opponent's astonished eyes, Qingming swung the dagger in his hand. Shafen's reaction was not slow. Seeing the dagger coming, he stopped the spell immediately without hesitation, and hid behind the fan. Ding! The dagger chopped on the fan, making a dull sound. Qingming was relentless, quickly put away the sword, flashed, and attacked again from another direction. Sensing the danger, Shafen immediately closed the fan in his hand and swung it hard, trying to smash the dagger and Qingming himself out. However, Qingming's reaction was so quick that as soon as the opponent made a move, he retracted his short sword, flashed again, and stabbed out from another angle. Qingming thought that even if this move could not hurt the opponent, it would force him to dodge. Unexpectedly, Shafen resolved the crisis with just a simple move. He saw that he opened the fan that had just been closed again, and then used one corner of it as a fulcrum, and suddenly rotated 90 degrees, just right to block the attack. Qingming's sword stabbed on the fan, making a tooth-grinding friction sound. Taking this opportunity, Shafen quickly formed a seal, and before Qingming continued to attack, he slapped out with a palm. Obviously, this palm was nearly 1 meter away from Qingming, but he was still slapped away. No, it's better to say that he was blown away than to say that he was slapped away. If Qingming is not mistaken, this should be a sea-level ninjutsu, wind style, fierce wind palm. Although this technique is only a basic wind style ninjutsu, it has many wonderful uses, and slapping him away is just the simplest use. Its real strength lies in its ability to work with flying ninja tools such as shurikens and kunai, using wind pressure to accelerate them, thereby achieving accurate hits and enhancing lethality. Just like now, Qingming had just been blown away and had not yet landed when he saw Shafen take out a kunai and seal it again, as if preparing to hide him with a two-hit combo. Unfortunately, although the opponent was fast, in Qingming's eyes, it was not so fast. At least, he still had a chance to fight back. So he saw that as soon as Qingming's feet landed on the ground, he took out 3 shurikens from his ninja tool bag. Then, he threw them out without even looking. However, this casual throw made Shafen's hair stand on end, and he dodged to the side without thinking. But the 3 shurikens actually touched each other in the air and changed their directions, just blocking Shafen's escape path. What? Shafen was startled and quickly raised the kunai in his hand, blocking the attack of a shuriken at the critical moment. However, he did not have time to block the other 2 shurikens. In desperation, he could only twist his body as much as possible to avoid the attack of the 2 shurikens. Swish! The sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh and blood rang out. One of the 2 shurikens cut through Shafen's shoulder, leaving a wound about an inch long. A trace of blood seeped out of it, and soon dyed his clothes red. Shafen glanced at the wound on his shoulder. And when he looked at Qingming again, his eyes were already full of fear. It was because the 3 shurikens just now seemed simple, but in fact they showed a very high level. To shoot those 3 shurikens, not only did he need to grasp the timing exactly, but he also had to accurately predict his behavior. And Qingming did both of these. In other words, as long as he gave the opponent enough distance, the opponent could easily kill him. However, family members know their own business. Qingming was not very sure about the prediction just now. After all, the 2 sides had not fought for a long time, and he could not accurately predict the opponent's actions. Just now, he just instinctively felt that the chance in that direction was the greatest, so he tried it. Unexpectedly, he was hit by one. To be honest, he was no less surprised than the other party, but that didn't stop him from acting confident and putting pressure on the other party. Chapter 105 Progress. However, Shafen was a Jonin after all, and soon calmed down. When he looked at Qingming again, his eyes were still cautious, but he was no longer afraid. Perhaps he also realized that Qingming's attack just now was probably a coincidence, otherwise he would not be pretending to fight with him here. Seeing that he did not deceive the other party, Qingming was not discouraged. It just so happened that he also wanted to test his own strength. Thinking back to the time when he faced the Jonin of Iwagakure, Ohara Shuji, the other party had not yet used his full strength, but he was already overwhelmed. Now, a few months have passed, and his single Magatama Sharingan has become a double Magatama, and his abilities in all aspects have been greatly enhanced. Ninjutsu, Fire Style, Phoenix Fire Technique, has been upgraded from LV3 to LV4, involving changes in form and nature, and the flexibility and power have been greatly improved. Illusion, Magical Illusion, the art of shackles has also been upgraded from the initial level of LV2 to the level of LV3 close to LV4. Both the launch speed and the power of the illusion are much stronger than before. The main battle Konoha style sword art has been upgraded from LV3 to LV5. There are also instant body technique and ninja tool throwing. The former has been upgraded from LV3 to LV4, and the latter has been upgraded from LV4 to LV5, which is also a big improvement. In addition to the improvement of these existing skills, he also learned a Uchiha style sword art that is more suitable for the Sharingan, and he also practiced it to LV5. Not only that, he also merged this technique with a Konoha style sword art to create a sword art that is more suitable for him and more advanced. In addition, in terms of illusion practice, in addition to the magic, Sharingan technique, he also learned another illusion, Sharingan, which was also good after being practiced to LV3. All these added up, whether it is close combat ability or long-range attack, he has made extremely obvious progress. Therefore, Qingming wanted to know if he could defeat Obara Hidiji now. He had not forgotten that Mizutani Shizuko died in his hands just to help him. However, it was obviously irrational to go to the other party directly. And now there happened to be a Sans ninja whose combat power was weaker than the other party's real Jonin, but stronger than the general special Jonin. Qingming would not miss it. Looking at the raging fighting spirit in Qingming's eyes, Shafen felt offended. He was a Jonin, and the other party was just a Chunin. How could he have the courage to provoke him, just because he was a ninja of the Uchiha clan? Humph, it's just a 2 Magatama Sharingan. With a thought, Shafen's momentum was fully opened. Suddenly, a pressure of death came over him, and Qingming's breathing stagnated slightly, but soon recovered. If it were an ordinary middle and lower level ninja with a weak will, facing this pressure, it would be very likely that he would feel hopeless and reveal his flaws. But Qingming was different. His ambition was not something that the natives of the ninja world could understand. The pressure of death was not enough to shake his mind. So, he saw such a strange scene. Shafen looked serious, with a fascinating aura around him, while Qingming was calm and looked at him with interest. Time passed by, and Shafen looked at Qingming, who was always the same. Finally, he couldn't hold it back and said, "You." However, as soon as he said a word, Qingming moved. Swish, 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 3 shurikens flew out. Seeing this, Shafen hurriedly stopped talking, and with a thought, he injected wind escape chakra into the fan, and then fanned it fiercely. Then, a gust of wind blew over, blowing the 3 shurikens back. This is not a ninjutsu, but simply the use of wind escape chakra. Just like Sarutobi Asuma injected wind escape chakra into the chakra knife to enhance its penetration, it can be done as long as the form and nature of wind attribute chakra are completed. In the same way, the changes in the form and nature of fire attribute chakra can also be used flexibly. For example, Qingming now dodged the incoming strong wind. Then, with a thought, a stream of fire escape chakra containing high temperature properties was injected into the dagger through his palm. Suddenly, the dagger obtained from the special ninja of Iwagakure, Shiraishi Kangdao, changed from snow white to dark red, and the surface of the sword was even covered with wisps of flames. Feeling the scorching heat coming from the sword, Qingming was full of joy. The physical and demonic double attack he had imagined long ago was finally realized. If this sword hits, the enemy will not only be torn apart, but also suffer from high temperature damage. It can be said to be a double blow and double pain. Qingming can't wait to test it. He did it as soon as he thought of it. Qingming kicked the ground with both feet, and the whole person shot out like a sharp arrow, and in the blink of an eye he came to the right side of Shafen. Then, the dagger was swung out and hit Shafen's neck directly. Feeling the scorching heat coming from the sword blade, Shafen did not dare to be careless and quickly turned the fan in his hand to block it. But at this moment, a feeling of sleepiness suddenly came over him, and he couldn't help but want to close his eyes. Not good. Shafen was shocked and bit his tongue. Blood slid down the corner of his mouth, and he woke up. It must be said that the mental will of a Jonin is much stronger than that of a mid-level ninja. Even if Qingming used his full strength to activate the Sharingan, he still couldn't hypnotize him. Perhaps, this was also because the danger was close at hand. In short, before the dagger in Qingming's hand hit the opponent, Shafeng had already woken up. Then, the opponent didn't want to block it head-on, and directly leaned back to avoid Qingming's attack. Seeing this, Qingming's expression did not change. He turned his wrist and the dagger slid from horizontal slash to oblique slash, hitting Shafeng's chest directly. The next moment, the dagger pierced Shafeng's body, leaving a ground full of hot gravel. That's right, gravel. It turned out that at the moment when the dagger was about to hit him, Shafeng used the ninjutsu, sand substitute in time, which eventually caused Qingming's sword to miss. Qingming actually saw the opponent's action, but he obviously had experience fighting with the Sharingan and avoided his sight in time, leaving him no chance to stop. Wind style, great scythe weasel technique. Qingming had just retracted the dagger when Shafeng, who had escaped a catastrophe, launched a counterattack. This move was the full-powered wind style, great scythe weasel technique. The previous two times, Qingming dared to withstand the storm and rush towards the opponent, but this time, he didn't dare. There was no other reason. This time the storm was too terrifying. The previous two times, the trees along the way only dropped some branches and leaves. But this time, let alone branches and leaves, even the big trees themselves were uprooted and chopped into pieces by countless vacuum blades in the air. Even the ground was scraped up. In this situation, let alone getting in, even getting close, Qingming felt extremely dangerous. So, without any hesitation, he immediately used the flash body technique and quickly ran to the side, away from the coverage of the storm. Not only him, but also the 3 sand ninjas and 3 Konoha ninjas who were fighting outside, saw this horrific scene and hid further outside, not daring to stay for a moment. For a moment, there was no one in the field except the raging storm. Chapter 106 Escape. When after blocking Qingming's short sword attack again, Shafeng opened the 3-star fan and used the fan to skillfully block the shuriken thrown by Qingming. Then, he injected wind escape chakra into it and fanned it hard, forcing Qingming, who approached for the second time, to retreat. Taking this opportunity, he quickly formed a seal and used the 3-star fan again to perform a powerful wind escape, covering a large area where Qingming was. At this time, Qingming usually makes two choices. If the storm is not powerful, he will rely on the sharp inside of the Sharingan to rush forward directly. But if the storm is too strong, he will temporarily avoid the edge and then look for another opportunity to attack. In the past quarter of an hour, he and Shafeng have been carrying out this rapid attack and defense conversion. The methods of the two are almost all exposed, and the test is their grasp of the timing and the depth of their background. In terms of combat experience, Shafeng is indeed better than Qingming, but the existence of the double Magatama Sharingan and the perfection of multiple skills have eliminated this gap. Even Qingming has to suppress the other party in return. For this reason, Shafeng had to frequently perform some powerful wind escape ninjutsu to gain a chance to breathe, which consumed a lot of chakra. On the contrary, the various means used by Qingming consumed very little chakra. It was obviously beneficial to Qingming to delay like this, and he did so. Even when one of his men died at the hands of the puppeteer, who was suspected to be from the same clan as Kainai, he didn't care. In addition, as the battle progressed, he also knew what the female sand ninja in her early 20s was good at. She turned out to be a rare illusion-type ninja in the sand village. The sound wave illusion was used quite well, and it forced another of Qingming's men to actively destroy his hearing. But this also greatly reduced his combat power. For a while, he was suppressed by the female ninja who was not good at close combat, and was completely in a passive defensive situation. The only one who had the advantage might be Kamijo Yoichi. That's right, the opponent was still his men this time, and his opponent was the 17 or 18-year-old, strong sand ninja. As Qingming expected, the opponent was indeed good at physical skills. However, it was far from amazing. Therefore, he was suppressed by Kamijo Yoichi, who had more comprehensive abilities. However, this advantage disappeared instantly with the addition of the puppeteer. If Qingming could not provide help, it could be predicted that it would not be long before his only two remaining men would be killed. However, Qingming only glanced at the predicament and stopped paying attention. The strongest Jonin of the enemy had been stopped by him, and the remaining three were all Chunins like them. If they were still not opponents in this situation, they could only blame themselves for their lack of strength. Qingming would not be like a nanny, always looking after their safety. What's more, he seemed to be in control of the initiative, but if he relaxed a little, the situation would likely be reversed in an instant. After all, the enemy was a Jonin, and he could not afford to be careless. Therefore, they could only pray for the best. Of course, Qingming could not delay for too long, otherwise several teammates would die. And it would be troublesome if those Sands village Chunins surrounded him. With a thought, Qingming once again accelerated the rhythm of the attack. At the same time, he no longer cared about the consumption of chakra, and began to frequently perform some ninjutsu, forcing Shefton to consume more chakra to cope with it. In addition, he was also actively looking for opportunities to perform illusions. Unfortunately, Shefton would rather suffer a little loss than give him this opportunity, so he could never successfully perform illusions. Halfway through the seal, after being misaligned by Shefton again, Qingming sighed in his heart. Sure enough, the level of the two illusions is still too low. If his illusion Sharingan has reached the level of LV5, he can release illusions with a single move. Then in a one-on-one duel like this, he only needs a simple move to easily control the opponent, so why is it so troublesome now? The saying about dealing with Sharingan that is circulated in the ninja world, 1-on-1, you must escape, 2-on-1, go to the back, is not deliberately exaggerated. That is the reputation of the Uchiha senior ninjas with 3 Magatama Sharingan who have fought with real swords and guns. Unfortunately, he has not yet practiced to the home, and cannot reach this level, so he can only slowly wear down the opponent's chakra. However, he was too lazy to do this, but he didn't know that Shefton was already complaining in his heart. Feeling that more than half of the chakra in his body had been consumed, and looking at Qingming's calm appearance, Shefton felt that the hope of victory was slim. Do you want to continue? Shefton asked himself in his heart. The task assigned by the village this time was to destroy the enemy's living forces as much as possible, and there was no clear mission goal. Therefore, retreating at this time would not take any responsibility. As if he had convinced himself, Shefton no longer hesitated, blocked Qingming's attack again, and forced him back with his backhand. Shefton seized the opportunity and immediately fled to the distance. Seeing this, Qingming's eyes lit up and said to himself, finally he moved. That's right, he had been waiting for Shefton to take action, whether it was attacking or running away. As long as the other party didn't hold on to compete with him in consumption, it would be acceptable. As for why? Of course, it was because only when the other party moved, he would have a chance. What opportunity? Of course, it was the opportunity to capture the other party. That's right. After realizing that he could defeat the opponent, he was thinking about how to capture the opponent alive and turn him into his second chakra battery. It definitely won't work here. Although the Sand Ninja and Konoha Ninja had to move the battle site to the periphery of the battlefield because the battle here was too intense, they could still observe this side. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he certainly couldn't beat the opponent half to death and then capture him. In this way, unless he silenced the witness, the person would definitely be handed over. Although Qingming's sense of belonging to Konoha was average and he would not be a nanny for his teammates, he would not make moves to slaughter his teammates. People still have to stick to some principles, otherwise they will be overwhelmed by power sooner or later. Qingming doesn't want to become a monster who only knows how to pursue power. Therefore, the best way is to avoid the eyes and ears of the public. To do this, Shefton must leave this place and move the final battlefield to other places. In this way, no one else knows what he did behind his back, and he doesn't have to consider killing people to silence them. And this is why he expects the other party to move. Therefore, seeing the other party running away, Qingming did not stop him, but just chased him closely. As the situation on their side changed, the situation on the two outer battlefields also changed accordingly. The two Konoha ninjas obviously fought more confidently, and the 3 Sand ninjas began to think about running away. After all, the senior ninjas on their side were defeated. If Qingming was free, they would definitely not be opponents. Therefore, running away is a matter of course. However, this decision is not so easy to make. The final outcome of the battle on the senior ninja side is still unknown. If they retreat rashly, they are likely to be punished. In addition, they still have the upper hand on the battlefield, and they are reluctant to throw away the credit they have obtained. And the puppeteer, his purpose is not only to gain credit, but also to find out the situation of the younger generation in the clan. Whether it is life or death, There must be a result. There will be another update in the evening. Chapter 107 Successful Capture. 10 minutes later, somewhere in the forest, Shafeng's low voice suddenly came. Wind style, great scythe weasel technique. The strong wind swept, and the surrounding trees rose from the ground. The dense vacuum blades flew everywhere, plowing a few feet deep gullies on the ground. In the storm, a figure flashed rapidly, constantly dodging the vacuum blades from all directions. This person was none other than Qingming. Just now, because he was too aggressive, he accidentally fell into Shafeng's trap and was trapped in the opponent's ninjutsu. At this time, he could only find a chance to escape. However, before he ran far, Shafeng's familiar voice came again. It's not easy to trap you. How can I let you leave easily? Fire style, explosive fire technique. Burn it for me. What? Fire style. Hearing the other party's words, Qingming's expression changed suddenly, and he immediately activated his Sharingan with all his strength and ran outside. However, no matter how fast he was not as fast as the spread of the flames. As the saying goes, fire borrows the wind, and wind helps the fire. When the wind style, great scythe weasel technique and the fire style, explosive fire technique are combined, the power they exert far exceeds that of a single ninjutsu. Obviously, this is Shafeng's hidden skill. Once this skill is used, it has achieved good results. No, in the storm, Qingming roared unwillingly, and then the whole person was engulfed by flames. Outside the coverage of the ninjutsu, Shafeng leaned on the 3-star fan, panting, staring at the place where Qingming was engulfed by flames, and murmured, "Did it succeed? Success?" As soon as Shafeng finished speaking, Qingming's cold laugh came to his ears, and along with it, there was the sound of a sword piercing the air. The extreme sense of crisis surged in his heart, and Shafeng had no time to think about it, and his body instinctively leaned to the right. Puff! The sound of a sharp blade entering the flesh sounded. The short sword in Qingming's hand pierced Shafeng's left arm. Then, he thought about it and injected fire chakra into the short sword, then raised it upwards and cut off half of Shafeng's arm. A smell of burned flesh and blood spread out, making Qingming frown. Shafeng covered his broken arm and retreated rapidly in pain until he was 3 or 4 meters away, then he stopped. Then he looked at Qingming and asked with gritted teeth, "Was that a shadow clone just now?" Obviously, he wanted to ask Qingming when he replaced his original body with a shadow clone. However, Qingming didn't want to waste words with him, and his figure flashed and came directly in front of him. Losing half of his arm, Shafeng's combat power was greatly reduced. Unable to form a seal, he could only use physical skills and use the 3-star fan to roughly release the power of wind chakra. Unfortunately, these were useless to Qingming. In just less than 2 minutes, Qingming found an opportunity and used the illusion Sharingan for the first time, successfully controlling the opponent. After that, things were very simple. Qingming knocked the opponent unconscious, and then performed the chakra absorption technique to extract all the remaining chakra in his body. Then, he performed the healing technique to treat the wound on the opponent's broken arm. Although it had been charred by the high temperature and no longer bleeding. In order to ensure the opponent's survival, he still spent chakra to treat it. After doing all this, Qingming made a seal again and performed the shadow clone technique to separate a shadow clone. Today, he has invested a lot of money. He performed the shadow clone technique one after another, and the chakra consumed is not a little bit. Fortunately, all this is worth it. As long as Shafeng is safely sent to the cave space and chakra is extracted once, today's loss can be easily made up. According to his Sharingan observation, the opponent's chakra is at least more than 8,000 points when it is fully in state. According to the 60% conversion rate, that is nearly 5,000 points of chakra. Such a large amount of chakra made Qingming's heart jump twice. Forcibly calming his inner restlessness, Qingming said to the shadow clone beside him, "You should leave now and send him back quickly." "Yes," the shadow clone responded softly. Without saying anything more, he carried the unconscious Shafeng and left the place. Qingming began to clean up the battlefield, erasing all traces that might arouse suspicion from others, to ensure that Shafeng's traces would not be noticed. After doing this, Qingming did not stay any longer and immediately rushed to the previous battlefield. If possible, he would like to catch more sand ninjas. For him, the more chakra batteries, the better. And the puppet master, it would be even better if he could catch him. Thinking of this, Qingming could not help but speed up his pace. However, when he returned to the previous battlefield, There was no one here except for the corpse of a Konoha ninja. Qingming glanced at the corpse, and it was his subordinate who took the initiative to destroy his hearing system. Obviously, the other party did not survive in the end. Just as Qingming was checking the corpse, a subtle sound suddenly came from the woods next to him. Qingming suddenly stood up and shouted, "Who's there, Captain?" "It's me," Kamijao Yoichi's somewhat weak voice came. Then, the forest shook, and Kamijao Yoichi walked out with a pale face. The other party covered his lower abdomen, and blood could be seen flowing out between his fingers. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious injury. The Sharingan in Qingming's pupils slightly enlarged, and he carefully looked at the other party up and down for a few times. After confirming that he was not an enemy in disguise, he stepped forward and said, "How are you?" "Where are the enemies?" Cough cough cough. Hearing this, Kamijao Yoichi coughed a few times and replied with a little effort, "A few minutes ago, they suddenly withdrew, and I don't know why." "Withdrawn?" Qingming groaned and continued to ask, "Do you know which direction they went?" Kamijao Yoichi pointed to the northwest. "Area E12, Qingming frowned. "Yet," Kamijao Yoichi nodded and said, "It's very likely." Hearing this, Qingming fell silent. At this time, Kamijao Yoichi suddenly asked, "By the way, Captain, where's Sheffin?" "Don't mention it, he escaped," Qingming replied with a gloomy face. Kamijao Yoichi did not doubt him. Because he did not think Qingming could kill a Jonin, or Qingming could force the other party to escape, which was beyond his expectation. As for going further, he dared not even think about it. On the other side, after Qingming answered this question, although he did not say anything on his face, his peripheral vision was paying attention to Kamijao Yoichi's expression. If the other party had any doubts about his statement, he might kill him to silence him. Although he would not kill innocent people indiscriminately, if the other party touched his core interests, he would not be merciful. Fortunately, Kamijao Yoichi behaved normally. Qingming glanced at the other party's lower abdomen injury, and after confirming that it would not be fatal for the time being, he did not waste chakra to treat it. Instead, he said directly, "You stay here for the time being and report our experience. I will go to the E12 area to take a look." "Okay, Captain," Kamijao Yoichi replied neatly. "Okay, be careful." Qingming gave the other party a final word, and then followed the direction where the sand village Chunin left and disappeared into the dense forest. After he left, Kamijao Yoichi raised his bloody hands, performed the summoning technique, summoned the parrot again, and began to explain the report. Chapter 108 Speculations. After separating from Kamijao Yoichi, Qingming began to search for the traces of the three sand ninjas in the direction he pointed. Thanks to his familiarity with this area and the powerful insight of the Sharingan, he soon found relevant clues. After that, he continued to pursue along these clues and finally caught up with them half an hour later. At this time, these people were still heading towards the E12 area. Combined with the words of the squad leader Toshiro Yukio's ninja dog Kitai, "There are many enemies in the E12 area," Qingming can see that the E12 area is the focus of this sand ninja attack. But why did so many sand ninjas suddenly appear? Qingming was puzzled by this question. You know, whether it is the E12 area next door, or their 11 area, or even the entire nearby area, strictly speaking, they all belong to the second line. It is understandable that some infiltration troops appear occasionally, but it is basically unlikely that the enemy will invade on a large scale like now. Unless the front line collapses, Qingming was startled by his sudden idea, but he quickly calmed down. If the whole front collapsed, then these would not be the only enemies that would appear here. At that time, let alone the E12 area, I am afraid that the entire area they were defending would be impacted. But he has not seen such signs yet. In other words, the front line has not completely collapsed. But the number of enemies does exceed the size of the infiltration force. In this case, there is only one explanation, that is, several strongholds on the front line were breached, resulting in a gap in the defense line, and some sand ninja took advantage of the opportunity to enter and launched a surprise attack. Well, that should be it. Although there is no definite news yet, Qingming feels that his guess should be correct. If this is the case, then these sand ninjas will not be able to stay for long. After all, as long as the whole front does not collapse, then Konoha will still be able to recapture those strongholds. At that time, it will be a closed door to fight the dog. If these sand ninjas do not want to be left here, they must withdraw before Konoha recaptures those strongholds. Thinking about this clearly, Qingming felt that the haze in his heart had dissipated, and the expression on his face could not help but relax a little. For him, being able to maintain stability is the best result, because time is on his side. As long as he can drag it out long enough, his strength will continue to grow. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. Qingming looked at the three figures below, suddenly raised his hands, and completed the seal of fire style, Phoenix fire technique at a very fast speed. Then he opened his mouth and spewed out a large amount of high-temperature flames. These flames turned into dozens or hundreds of fireballs almost the moment they appeared. Obviously, with a continuous improvement of the proficiency of fire style, Phoenix fire technique, the time for the flame to differentiate into fireballs is rapidly shortening. Now, there is almost no gap in it, as if the flames turned into fireballs as soon as they came out of his mouth. This seems to be similar to the beginning of learning fire style, Phoenix fire technique. But don't forget, when you first learned fire style, Phoenix fire technique, those fireballs appeared one by one. Now, his enemies need to face the pursuit and interception of dozens or hundreds of fireballs at the same time. Don't look at this small difference, the difficulty of the enemy dodging is doubled. Just like now, if the three Sands Village Chunins were facing the sneak attack of the fire style, Phoenix fire technique before level 2, they might have been able to dodge it safely. But now, it is impossible for the opponent to avoid Qingming's attack without paying some price. Sensing the danger, the three Sand Village ninjas immediately alerted, who, however, before they could find Qingming's trace, hundreds of fireballs had already hit them head-on. The speed was so fast and the angle was so tricky that they had no choice but to dodge. But their movements were full of loopholes in Qingming's eyes. Qingming controlled the fireballs without thinking and surrounded the three people. The first one to be hit was the 17 or 18-year-old Taijutsu ninja. Although the opponent's speed was fast, it was not fast enough. In the end, he was blocked by more than a dozen fireballs and had to bear the attack of 2 fireballs. His chest and right arm were charred. He fell to the ground on the spot and lost his combat power. The second one to be hit was the female ninja in her early 20s who was good at sound wave illusion. However, the opponent used the substitution technique at the critical moment and escaped. As for the puppeteer, the opponent was taken care of by Qingming. Even with the protection of the puppet, he was still hit by a fireball and suffered serious injuries. Even the puppet was bombarded intensively, and the body was damaged. After a few breaths, the fireball disappeared and the field returned to silence again. The female ninja and the puppeteer stood side by side, looking in the direction where the fireball had just flown, but saw nothing. This made the two of them look very ugly. After a moment of silence, the female ninja suddenly nodded at the puppeteer, as if hinting at something. Seeing this, the puppeteer immediately responded with an understanding look, and then quickly took out 2 earplugs and plugged his ears. The next moment, the female ninja raised her hands in quickly formed seals. At the same time, her mouth opened slightly, and she was preparing to perform some kind of sound wave illusion, trying to force the sneak attacker to show up in this way. However, before she could finish the spell, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her, followed by a pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes, occupying her entire field of vision. Sharingan? Jinjutsu? Atawa was horrified and tried to remove the Jinjutsu immediately. But as soon as she started, she felt the chakra in her body rapidly draining away, and then there was a pain in the back of her neck, and she fainted. The person who made the move was none other than Qingming, who had been watching from the dark for a long time. Because he didn't know how much resistance the Sharingan had to the sonic Jinjutsu, he took the initiative to attack before the other party made a move. The process was also very smooth. With a perfect realm of instant body technique and superb breath-holding skills, he came to the other party in a blink of an eye without anyone noticing. Because he was distracted by the Jinjutsu, he had no time to react and was directly controlled by his Jinjutsu Sharingan. Then he extracted the chakra, knocked him out, and took him away. During this time, the puppeteer was only concerned about his own escape and had no intention of stopping him at all. It's not that he didn't want to, but he didn't dare to, because he had recognized Qingming's identity and knew his strength, so he didn't dare to stay for a moment. Unfortunately, he didn't want to provoke Qingming, but it didn't mean that Qingming would let him go. After dealing with Atawa, Qingming did the same thing again. After draining the chakra of the physical ninja and knocking him out, he immediately chased after the puppeteer. Needless to say, even if the other party had hidden a hand and suddenly summoned a pretty good puppet, it still couldn't last long in Qingming's hands, and soon followed the footsteps of his 2 teammates. Qingming looked at the 3 people who were unconscious on the ground, and knew that the main reason why these people behaved so badly in front of him was that he succeeded in sneak attacking first. If they hadn't been caught off guard by him at the beginning, these three people would not have been defeated so quickly and so thoroughly. Of course, this was also because they had just fought a fierce battle with three Konoha ninjas, and their strength was not at the peak. But in general, Qingming's strength was too much beyond theirs, which made them not even have a decent struggle. However, both sides are enemies, and Qingming will not show mercy to them. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 End. After gathering the three people together, Qingming no longer wasted time and raised his hand to perform the shadow clone technique to create a shadow clone to take them back. At this moment, a memory suddenly emerged in his mind, which was the process of Shafen being sent to the cave space. Obviously, this was the memory of the previous shadow clone. Through the memory, Qingming already knew that the other party had successfully completed the task. This made him secretly relieved. Before, he was still worried that the shadow clone would encounter some trouble on the way, and was afraid of losing Shafen, the large chakra battery. Now it seems that he was overthinking, and the shadow clone perfectly completed his task. In this case, let's continue. With a thought, Qingming performed the shadow clone technique again. Fortunately, the level 1 shadow clone technique can maintain 3 shadow clones at the limit, otherwise it would be difficult for him to send the 3 sand ninjas in front of him back at once. Bang bang, 2 groups of chakra smoke dispersed, and 2 shadow clones exactly like Qingming appeared in the field. The reason why there are no 3 clones is that there is another shadow clone guarding the cave space, so only 2 clones can be separated here. Fortunately, 2 shadow clones are enough. Without Qingming's order, the 2 shadow clones came forward, carried the 3 people on the ground, nodded at him, and left without saying a word. Looking at the backs of the 2 people leaving, Qingming felt the chakra in his body, and there were less than 2,000 points left, which made him feel very insecure. Originally, he planned to rush to Area E12 as soon as possible to see if he could fish in troubled waters and catch a few more sand ninjas. Now, forget it. However, he couldn't do nothing. He told Kamijao Yoichi that he was going to Area E12 for support. If he didn't go, it might cause unnecessary suspicion afterwards. Now there are many secrets around him, and it is better not to arouse suspicion if possible. After thinking about it, Qingming finally decided to continue to rush to Area E12. However, the speed can be slowed down appropriately. In this way, when he arrives, if the shadow clone has finished a task, he can remove the ninjutsu and restore his chakra, and then continue with the previous plan. If it is too late, then he can only do nothing. Anyway, Qingming will not joke with his own life. Having made a decision, Qingming did not delay any longer and immediately rushed to the E12 area. Half an hour later, Qingming arrived at the E12 area. At this time, the 2 shadow clones he had separated had completed the task, and his chakra had recovered to more than 5,000 points. According to the original plan, he should fish in troubled waters next, capture more sand ninjas, and expand the chakra battery group. However, his plan ended before it even began. It's not that there are no sand ninjas in the field. On the contrary, the number of sand ninjas here far exceeds his expectations. But it is precisely because of this that he dared not act rashly. There is no other reason. The intensity of the sand village's attack this time obviously exceeded his plan. Now, even though the Konoha ninjas from several surrounding areas have come to support, the sand ninjas still have no intention of retreating, and the battle in the field even has a tendency to intensify. In this situation, how dare Qingming fish in troubled waters? In fact, as soon as he showed up, he was immediately targeted. In desperation, he could only join the battle. With his sharp swordsmanship and a pair of double Magatama Sharingan, Qingming killed 9 sand ninjas in succession within an hour, which greatly relieved the pressure of the Konoha ninjas in a nearby area. But because of this, he was targeted by a sand-hidden ninja, whose strength was even higher than that of Shafen. Qingming was in a general state and didn't want to fight the opponent head-on, so he simply paddled in the water, no longer attacking, just defending and dodging. Although the opposite ninja was powerful, he couldn't do anything to him for a while, so he could only keep testing. In this way, time passed by minute. In a blink of an eye, more than half an hour passed. As the sky gradually darkened, it was almost time for the guard change. Qingming felt that if they continued to delay, these sand ninjas would not have to leave. Guard change means the arrival of fresh troops. According to Qingming's previous 2 experiences, almost half of the team would be replaced each time the guard was changed. With so many fresh troops, Qingming did not think that the sand ninjas in the field could withstand it, so the opponent would most likely evacuate before this. As for the fact that the opponent was not clear about their guard change time, this possibility was directly ruled out by him. With such an offensive by the opponent, how could it be easily launched without a detailed investigation of their side? What's more, this guard change time is not a secret. With so many people every time, it is too easy to figure it out. Sure enough, not long after, sharp whistles suddenly sounded in many places in the field. Hearing this whistle, the sand ninjas present immediately gave up their opponents and gathered around the nearby Jonin at the fastest speed. After that, under the leadership of a group of sand ninjas, they went straight out. In a short while, they broke through the defense line of Konoha's temporary organization and broke out of the encirclement. The leaders of Konoha obviously didn't want the other party to leave so easily, and soon issued an order to pursue. So, the Konoha ninjas who were still able to move began to chase the sand ninjas again. In this case, some sand ninjas inevitably fell behind. Taking this opportunity, Qingming captured 2 sand ninjas alive again and let the shadow clone take them away. The whole process was extremely careful and did not reveal any flaws. In a flash, time came to an hour later. The pursuit was temporarily suspended, and all Konoha ninjas returned to their respective bases. The Konoha brigade that came to replace the guard arrived an hour in advance, and did not stay for long, and hurried to the west again. There was the front line of resistance against the sand village. After they left, Qingming received an order to cancel all the vacations this time and the next time. In the next half-month, everyone must continue the tasks of the past week, strengthen patrols, strictly prevent the infiltration of sand ninjas, and ensure the safety of the base camp. As for the understaffed teams, the base camp will add them as appropriate later. In addition, Qingming also learned the latest situation of the front line from the squad leader Toshiro Yukio. As he guessed, 2 strongholds on the front line were indeed breached by the sand village, and now other strongholds are dispatching personnel to fight for those 2 strongholds. And the fresh troops who did not stay just now were going to the front line to support. However, Qingming estimated that these people might not be enough. The stronghold that the sand village had finally conquered could not be easily abandoned. Therefore, in the next few days, the headquarters should continue to send more personnel. No wonder the order said that the headquarters would add personnel to each team as appropriate. It turned out that there were not enough people. From this, it can be seen that Konoha's reserve forces are actually not enough. If this continues, shrinking the defense line is almost an inevitable choice. It's just that I don't know how long the front line can hold out. This time the stronghold was breached. I'm afraid it's just the beginning. In the future, this kind of thing is expected to become the norm. In other words, the second line in the future will no longer be a simple second line, because they will encounter a large number of enemies at any time. After thinking for a long time, Qingming shook his head. He thought to himself, why think so much? As long as I can maintain the rapid growth of my strength, I can easily deal with any danger I encounter. With this thought in mind, Qingming no longer wasted time. After saying hello to the team on duty at night, he returned to his residence and began to practice on his own. Chapter 110, Double Level Up. The next day, afternoon, Qingming finished his routine patrol and found an opportunity to come to the cave space. You're here? Seeing Qingming coming, the shadow clone stationed here said. Yeah, Qingming nodded and responded casually, and then asked the other party to cancel the shadow clone technique. The next moment, a stream of chakra flowed into his body along with a mysterious connection. Along with it, the other party's memories during this period appeared. Qingming quickly read the other party's memory, and after finding no problems, he performed the shadow clone technique again and split a shadow clone. Without his instructions, this shadow clone left the cave space and went straight to the team's base. Next, the other party will replace him and stay there. Everything is ready. Qingming no longer wastes time, and turns to enter the depths of the cave to complete the first harvest. But after taking 2 steps, he didn't know what he remembered, and suddenly muttered, "Panel." The next moment, the familiar light blue light screen emerged. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 11 years old constitution. 10 spirit. 11 chakra. 4,120, 1,120,112,497, bloodline, Sharingan, dual Magatama, 652/5000, 799/5000, skills, chakra refining technique, LV4, 1008, 2000, LV4, 1089, 2000, fire style, great fireball technique, LV2, 125 out of 500, fire style, House of Phoenix fire technique, LV4, 381/2000, LV4, 621/2000, fire style, dragon fire technique, LV2, 118 out of 500, shadow clone technique, LV1, 1/200, LV1, 15/200, chakra absorption technique, LV2, 250/500, LV2, 435/500, healing technique, LV2, 161/500, LV2, 224/500, magic, Sharingan, LV3, 625/1000, LV3, 715/1000, illusion, Sharingan, LV3, 190/1000, LV3, 280/1000, heart reflection technique, LV5, 1832/5000, LV5, 2192/5000, sword technique, LV5, 1/5000, LV5, 190/5000, chakra control, LV3, 602/1000, LV3, 685/1000, 3 body technique, LV3, 00, instant body technique, LV4, 0/0, ninja tool throwing, LV5, 0/0, skipping the previous columns. Qingming directly focused his attention on the chakra absorption technique. Just as he remembered, after nearly 10 days of practice, its proficiency has reached level 2, 435/500, and it is only 65 points away from level 3. Considering the huge amount of chakra to be harvested next, every point of conversion rate improvement can gain a lot of chakra. Therefore, Qingming decided to invest a sum of chakra first and upgrade this technique to level 3. Qingming did it as soon as he thought of it. He did not waste time and turned back to the room opened for him by the shadow clone and began to practice on his own. In a blink of an eye, an hour passed. After completing the performance of the chakra absorption technique again, a new feeling suddenly emerged in Qingming's mind. After a moment, Qingming opened his eyes, and a flash of enlightenment flashed in his eyes. He opened the panel and took a look. Sure enough, his chakra refining technique had been upgraded from level 2, 435 out of 500, to level 3, 1/1000. I don't know how it works, muttering, Qingming stood up, left the room, and went deep into the cave. At this time, Kainai was no longer alone here. In addition to him, there were 6 people, namely Shufeng and his 3 Chunin subordinates, and the 2 unlucky guys who were left alone when the Sands village retreated. Facing the eyes of these people who were either hostile, fearful, or inquiring, Qingming went straight to Kainai's side. Then, under the cannibalistic eyes of Shufeng's puppet master subordinate, he completed the seal of the chakra absorption technique and pressed his hand on Kainai's head. A suction force emanated from his palm, quickly drawing out the chakra in Kainai's body. After carefully feeling it for a moment, Qingming had estimated the effect of the LV3 chakra absorption technique. It can absorb about 300 points of chakra per second, and the increase is not a qualitative leap compared to the LV2 200 points. However, in terms of conversion rate, it has increased by 10 percentage points again, from the previous 60% to the current 70%. Apart from anything else, just this 10% increase alone, the consumption of nearly 1,500 points of chakra he just consumed is not a waste. Qingming even had an impulse to upgrade this technique to another level and continue to strengthen its effect. However, when he saw the 1,000 points of proficiency, he calmed down. According to the calculation that it takes 1,500 chakra points to increase the proficiency by 65 points, 1,000 points of proficiency is 23,000 chakra points. This is indeed not a small number. But at the same time, this is not an unattainable goal. In fact, it can be said that it is very easy to achieve. Thinking of this, Qingming cast his eyes on the other 6 sand ninjas, and 3 Magatama slowly rotated in his scarlet pupils. After a moment, he retracted his gaze. According to his estimation, the chakras of these people added together are about 28,000 points, plus Kainai's 5,000 points, that is 33,000 points. In this way, according to the 70% conversion rate, it is 23,000 points, just enough for him to upgrade the chakra absorption technique from level 3 to level 4. Of course, there will definitely be errors. However, with his current chakra amount, a slight error is enough to make up for it. The only thing to consider is that doing so will delay the evolution of the Sharingan and the mastery of the changes in the form and nature of the fire attribute chakra. After all, he originally intended to use these chakras in the practice of the reflection heart technique and the fire style, Phoenix fire technique. If they are diverted, it will inevitably slow down their progress. However, as the saying goes, sharpening the knife does not delay the chopping of wood. If he can upgrade the chakra absorption technique from level 3 to level 4, according to previous experience, the chakra conversion rate is likely to be further improved. In this way, the subsequent harvest of chakra will inevitably increase, which is more than enough to make up for today's losses. What's more, if only 23,000 points of chakra are diverted, it won't delay much. With this thought, Qingming no longer hesitated and immediately came to Shefeng's side. He saw him perform the chakra refining technique again, absorbing all the chakra that he had finally recovered into his body. Immediately, the chakra in Qingming's body surged to more than 11,000 points, almost reaching the limit of his chakra meridians. Qingming endured the discomfort of his body and tore off the tape on Kainai and Shefeng's faces. Without waiting for them to speak, he stuffed a few soldiers' pills into their mouths, and then quickly put the tape back on. After doing this, he immediately returned to the room opened by the shadow clone and once again worked hard to improve his proficiency in the chakra absorption technique. 2 hours later, his chakra absorption technique reached level 3, 350/1000, and the chakra in his body also dropped to the warning line of 4,000 points. After a short rest, Qingming appeared in the depths of the cave again. This time, he still didn't waste time. He caught 3 Sans village Chunins and drained their chakra. Then, his chakra returned to a nearly overflowing state again. After feeding them a few soldiers' pills as usual, Qingming returned to the room again and continued to work hard to improve his proficiency in the chakra absorption technique. In this way, after spending 6 hours draining the chakra of the 7 sand ninjas, he finally reached level 4, 1/2000, of the chakra absorption technique in the middle of the night. Without bothering to test its effect, Qingming almost fell asleep. After repeating it 1,000 times, even if the positive feedback was strong, Qingming could not hold on any longer. Soon, snoring sounded in the room. Chapter 111 Redistribution. The next day, early in the morning, Qingming woke up from his sleep. After being confused for a moment, he suddenly stood up and ran to the deepest part of the cave. When he found that the 7 sand ninjas were all there, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. To be honest, Qingming was still a little worried about imprisoning these people here, even if they had lost the ability to make seals. But he had no choice. To control these people, the best way was undoubtedly to cast illusions, and the second was various sealing methods. However, for the former, his illusion level was not enough, and the double Magatama Sharingan did not support him to do so. For the latter, the required sealing and curse seals were not something he could get. What's more, whether it was the former or the latter, their essence was to interfere with the chakra in the target's body, thereby achieving the effect of restricting the target's actions. But he needed these people to refine chakra, and if these methods were used to restrict them, it would undoubtedly be putting the cart before the horse. Therefore, he could only use strict supervision to prevent them from doing some tricks. Coincidentally, he had the Sharingan, and ordinary tricks could not be hidden from him. However, thinking about how he slept soundly last night, Qingming couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Fortunately, nothing happened, otherwise he would regret it. Hey, I can't work so hard in the future, muttering to himself, Qingming came to Sand Ninja and tested the effect of the LV4 chakra absorption technique. After a moment, he withdrew his palm and showed an expression of as expected on his face. Yes, as he expected, after the chakra absorption technique was promoted to LV4, the conversion rate was improved again, and it was still 10%. In other words, now when he performs the chakra absorption technique, he can convert the extracted chakra into his own chakra at a ratio of 80%. There is no doubt that this is another significant improvement. Not only that, after being promoted to LV4, the speed of the chakra absorption technique extracting the target chakra has also increased, directly from 300 points per second to 500 points per second. This is already quite impressive. Generally, if a chunin is caught by him, it only takes 5 or 6 seconds to drain the opponent's chakra. Of course, the premise is that he performs this technique. Shaking his head, Qingming stopped thinking about it. After splitting off a shadow clone to continue to watch over these people, he quickly left the cave space. Quietly returning to the base, Qingming obtained the memories of this period from the shadow clone. After that, he began to carry out patrol tasks according to the plan. At the same time, he was also thinking about how to distribute these extra chakras. According to the results of yesterday's extraction, the 7 people in the cave space can supply him with about 33,000 chakras every day. According to the 80% conversion rate, that is 26,400 points. These chakras must not be used for a single skill. After thinking for a long time, Qingming finally decided to do the same as the previous allocation of Kainai's chakra. Use these chakras in the ratio of 2:1 for the practice of reflection of the hard and fire style, Phoenix Fire style. In other words, 17,600 points are allocated to reflection of the hard and 800 points are allocated to fire style, Phoenix Fire style. The minimum chakra consumption for gaining proficiency in each use of the heart reflection technique is 164 points, with a 18% reduction of chakra control. 17,600 points can give him an additional 107 proficiency points. In this way, taking into account the 30 points of proficiency in the heart reflection technique that he can gain from his own chakra, that is 137 points. These proficiency points can increase the evolution of his Sharingan by 45 points, plus the 3 points of evolution that can be obtained by maintaining the Sharingan open, that is 48 points. Now, the evolution of his Sharingan is 800/5000. According to this calculation, it will only take about 3 months for his Sharingan to evolve into 3 Magatama. Before that, his heart reflection technique will be promoted to LV6 first, and the effect will definitely be greatly improved at that time. In other words, the time for his Sharingan to evolve into 3 Magatama will definitely be less than 3 months. In fact, it may be much less than 3 months. At this point, Qingming couldn't help but feel fortunate for his wise choice. Without the chakra absorption technique, it's unknown how long it would take for his Sharingan to evolve. There is also the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique. When you increase its proficiency a little, the chakra consumed is half of that of the heart reflection technique, and the chakra allocated to it is also half of that of the heart reflection technique. Therefore, he can also gain 107 proficiency points every day. Counting the 16 proficiency points that can be obtained from his own chakra, that is 123 points. According to this progress, his fire style, Phoenix Fire technique will be able to advance to perfection in no more than 2 weeks. By then, he should be able to fully master the changes in the form and nature of fire attribute chakra. Once this is confirmed, he can start to develop the second chakra attribute and improve the level of fire style, Great Fireball technique and fire style, Dragon Fire technique. With the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique in front, I believe this speed will not be too slow. In a flash, a day passed. After the patrol mission was over and the night shift team was handed over, Qingming began his own training. He used the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique again and again, quickly consuming the chakra in his body. An hour later, night fell. At this time, the chakra in Qingming's body was almost consumed. So, he found a place where no one was, and used the shadow clone technique to create a shadow clone. Looking at the other party, Qingming said directly, "You will stay here next." Yes, the shadow clone heard the words and responded softly, and then returned to the base. Qingming was alone, avoiding the sight of everyone, and came to the entrance of the cave. He looked around and made sure that there was no one. He carefully pushed aside the weeds and jumped in. Compared with yesterday, there was still no change here. Qingming received the relevant memories from the shadow clone, and after confirming that there was no problem, he came to the depths of the cave and began to extract the chakra of several sand ninjas. After his own chakra was full, he returned to the room opened by the shadow clone and quickly began to practice the reflection of the heart technique. In this way, Qingming carried out tasks during the day and practiced ninjutsu such as fire style, phoenix fire technique that made a little noise when practiced. At night, he quietly returned to the cave space and used the extra chakra provided by several sand ninjas to practice skills such as reflection of the heart technique that made little noise. Although he was very busy every day, when he saw the rapidly increasing proficiency behind each skill on the panel, he still felt that his efforts were not in vain. This kind of thing that pays off, the positive feedback it brings to people is unparalleled. Therefore, even if he can only sleep 4 or 5 hours a day, Qingming still enjoys it. Chapter 112 Perfection. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 10 days have passed. During these 10 days, the E11 area that the Qingming team is responsible for was quite quiet, or the entire western defense area was very quiet. As for the reason, it is very simple, everyone's attention is not here. Now, whether it is the Sand Village, the Hidden Leaf Village, or other forces planted nearby, they all focus their attention on the two strongholds on the front line. The battle there is quite fierce. The stronghold has changed hands several times. The Sand Village and the Hidden Leaf Village are frantically increasing their troops. As far as Qingming knows, Konoha has sent 3 waves of support. Now this is the 4th wave. That's right, just now, Qingming sent the 4th wave of Konoha support troops out of the defense zone. Looking at their backs as they left, Qingming thought to himself, I don't know how many of these people can survive. Obviously, the two strongholds have become a kind of symbol. Whether they can be recaptured will determine Konoha's choice when facing the attack of the Sand Village for a long time in the future. If they can be recaptured, it means that Konoha still has the strength to fight. After that, if we encounter similar things again, we will actively respond. If it cannot be recaptured, it means that Konoha is no longer able to maintain the current front line. In this case, it is necessary to give up the outer strongholds step by step and shrink the entire defense line. During this period, the resistance will naturally not be too strong. That is why the battle there is so fierce. After thinking for a while, Qingming retracted his gaze, shook his head, and stopped thinking about it. These things are not his turn to worry about. What he needs to pay attention to is whether he will be transferred there, and if he is transferred there, how to ensure his survival. These things related to his own life are what he should consider. Fortunately, Qingming has not received a transfer order. In a flash, another 2 days passed. Time came to the beginning of October. This afternoon, after the patrol, Qingming began to practice the fire style, phoenix fire technique as usual, once, twice, 3 times. Finally, after performing this technique for the 27th time, Qingming suddenly stopped, then closed his eyes, stood there, and did not move for a long time. Time passed by minute, and after a quarter of an hour, Qingming finally woke up. When he opened his eyes, a flash of realization flashed across his eyes. With a swipe, the dagger was pulled out from his waist by Qingming. After that, without any movement on his part, the dagger changed from snow white to dark red. Obviously, he injected the fire escape chakra into it, but unlike before, there were no wisps of flames on the blade. This does not mean that his fire escape has become weaker. On the contrary, it has become stronger. The reason why those flames appeared before was because he did not have enough control over the fire escape chakra. But now, this problem no longer exists. As for the reason, it is very simple. He has completely mastered the changes in the form and nature of the fire attribute chakra, so naturally there will be no leakage of power. How did he do this? The answer is also very simple. His fire escape, Phoenix fire technique has been upgraded from the previous LV4 to the current LV5, reaching perfection. With this, he successfully mastered the changes in the form and nature of fire attribute chakra, and his understanding and mastery of fire style chakra went straight to a new level. At this time, Qingming had a hunch that he should be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort when practicing other fire style ninjutsu. With this thought, Qingming immediately raised his hands, quickly formed the 6 seals of Si Wei Shen Hai Wu Yin, opened his mouth, and spit out a fireball with a diameter of about 1 meter. The fireball flew straight out and hit a big tree not far away, igniting a raging flame. However, Qingming didn't even look at the effect of this technique. He opened the panel with a thought and directly checked the proficiency behind the fire style, great fireball technique. Without any surprises, his proficiency increased by 5 points after just one use. This made Qingming very excited. and he secretly thought that his strategy of improving a ninjutsu first was correct. After that, he tried several more times. Although his proficiency increased slightly, it basically remained between 4 and 5 points, which was a very fast speed. In addition, he also tested the fire style, dragon fire technique, and the effect was the same as the fire style, great fireball technique, and his proficiency also increased rapidly. In view of this, Qingming made a direct decision to divide the 1,300 chakra points originally allocated to the fire style, Phoenix fire technique by himself, and evenly divided them between the fire style, great fireball technique and the fire style, dragon fire technique. In this way, his proficiency can increase by about 40 points every day. In this way, it only takes about 10 days for his 2 ninjutsu to be upgraded from LV2 to LV3, and the practicality will inevitably rise to a higher level. The only regret is that even if his fire style, Phoenix fire technique is upgraded to LV500, he still cannot make a single-handed seal or cast a spell without a seal. Qingming estimated that in order to achieve this, he might have to upgrade his chakra control to another level. After all, the essence of the seal is to assist the ninja to mobilize the chakra in the body, and if the ninja can do this by itself, then this step can be simplified or even omitted. With this thought, Qingming opened the panel and looked at the chakra control. After these days of practice, his proficiency has increased by more than 100 points, and now it has reached level 3, 810/1000. However, at this point, the blessing brought by the double Magatama Sharingan is almost gone. If there is no new way next, then it can only rely on slow grinding. New way, Qingming murmured, thinking of the 2 puppeteers imprisoned deep in the cave. Wasn't one of the reasons why he captured Kainai in the first place to borrow the puppet secret technique mastered by the other party to speed up the practice of chakra control? It's just that the other party has been unwilling to hand it over. Now that such a long time has passed, I don't know if the other party has changed his mind, Qingming thought in his heart, turned and came to an empty corner, raised his hand and performed the shadow clone technique, splitting a shadow clone. After nodding to the other party, Qingming quietly left the place and rushed to the direction of the cave entrance. Even if Kainai was unwilling this time, Qingming was confident that he could get the puppet secret technique. There was no other reason. After these days of observation, he was sure that Kainai was the weak point of Shafin's puppet master. With this as a breakthrough, it should not be difficult to get the puppet secret technique. What's more, he didn't want everything, just a method of condensing, dividing and controlling the chakra threads. As for the puppet making and control technology that the other party valued, he didn't care much. In this way, a breakthrough should be found. Thinking of this in his heart, Qingming had already arrived at the entrance of the cave, looked around, and made sure that there was no one, and immediately got in. Chapter 113 Unexpected Success. Arriving at the cave, Qingming received the memory of the shadow clone as usual, and after confirming that there was no problem, he walked into the deepest part. After these days of imprisonment, the 7 sand ninjas in the field became much sloppier. However, perhaps because of the large number of people, their mental state was still good, and no one collapsed because of despair. On the contrary, they were still actively trying to save themselves, and if they wanted to save themselves, the first thing they needed to ensure was their own lives. Therefore, Qingming asked them to refine chakra, and they did not dare to refuse. However, Qingming did not dare to guarantee that they would still cooperate so well when they could not see any hope of escape. Forget it, these are all things for the future, let's get the puppet secret technique first. Thinking of this, Qingming went straight to Kainai and directly performed the chakra absorption technique to drain his chakra. Just when others thought that Qingming would continue to extract the chakra of the second person as before, he suddenly untied the rope that bound Kainai. At this time, everyone was stunned, including Kainai himself. However, he reacted quickly. Realizing that his hands and feet were loosened, he immediately raised his legs and kicked Qingming's right face fiercely. However, the long-term binding had already made his body numb, and coupled with the fact that Qingming had just drained his chakra, he could not exert much strength at all. Therefore, Qingming easily blocked the attack, and then threw an uppercut, knocking the opponent unconscious. After that, regardless of the reactions of others, he dragged the opponent's body and walked out. Seeing this scene, Shafin, the puppeteer's subordinate, immediately began to struggle frantically, and kept making humming sounds from his sealed mouth, trying to attract Qingming's attention. And this was what Qingming wanted to see. However, it is not so easy to reveal the purpose. With this thought, Qingming stopped, threw Kainai aside, and flashed to his side, and asked with a gloomy face, "Do you want to die?" Hearing this, Hisha twisted his body wildly, and screamed woo 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 in the direction of Kainai, as if he wanted to say something. Seeing this, Qingming cooperated and looked back at Kainai. Then, after thinking for a while, he raised his seal and performed the chakra absorption technique, pressing it on the top of Hisha's head. After a few seconds, the chakra in Hisha's body was completely absorbed by him, and Qingming tore off the tape on his face. However, before he could speak, Hisha asked first, "Where are you taking him? Oh, do you care about him?" Seeing his performance, Qingming pretended to be interested and said, "Tell me, what is your relationship?" However, hearing his question, Hisha immediately closed his mouth and stopped talking. Seeing this, Qingming snorted coldly and was about to seal him with tape again. Realizing that he was about to be deprived of the right to speak again, Hisha hurriedly said, "Wait, I'll tell you, I'll tell you." Hearing this, Qingming stopped and motioned him to continue. Hisha struggled for a long time, and when he saw Qingming was about to wrap him with tape again, he said in a self-destructive manner, "He is my nephew, dear." Qingming asked, "Dear?" After saying these two words, Hisha seemed to have lost all his strength at once. And he collapsed on the stone pillar. Obviously, he also knew that if he said this relationship, it would mean that Qingming could use Kainai's life to control him at will. But what can he do? Kainai is not only his nephew, but also the hope of the family. If Kainai dies here, it means that the family will be completely ruined. This is something he cannot accept. Therefore, no matter what, he must save Kainai's life. As for whether the other party can still take on the mission of revitalizing the family without his hands, this may have some impact on other families, but in their family, this is not a big deal. It can be perfectly solved by replacing a pair of puppet arms. Qingming may find it difficult to understand Hisha's obsession with the rise of the family, but it does not prevent him from realizing the fact that Hisha has surrendered. That's right, surrender. Judging from the other party's performance just now, anyone with an IQ online knows what to do next. Obviously, Hisha also knows this. But he still did it, which means that he has made plans to cooperate. Things went so smoothly that Qingming was a little dazed. Fortunately, he quickly calmed down and said directly, "Since you want to know what I took him to do, then come together." As he said that, he untied the rope on Hisha's body, and then turned and walked towards the place where Kainai fainted. Looking at Qingming's back that seemed to be completely defenseless, Hisha stayed there for several seconds, and his expression changed again and again, but he didn't dare to make a move in the end. Not to mention that he didn't have any chakra in his body now, and he lost his hands and puppets. His condition was almost extremely bad, and he couldn't be his opponent at all. Even if he was in his prime now, he couldn't last a few rounds under the opponent. In this case, it was meaningless to make a rash move except to anger the opponent. So, after a struggle, he gave up the plan of sneak attack. Hearing the weak footsteps behind him, Qingming's mouth curled up slightly. The opponent didn't dare to make a move in this situation, which meant that he really cared about Kainai, rather than tricking him into untying him and then waiting for an opportunity to escape. In this case, the possibility of getting the puppet secret technique from the other party is even greater. Soon, the two walked into the room opened by the shadow clone, one in front and one behind. Qingming threw Kainai in his hand to the side and sat directly on a stone chair. Hisha watched this scene with twitching eyelids, forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart, and said, "Tell me, what do you want me to do?" Obviously, the other party was not stupid. Seeing that Qingming allowed him to follow, he knew that there was something for him to do, otherwise there was no need to pay attention to him. Therefore, he did not beat around the bush to test, and directly asked what he wanted him to do. However, when hearing the other party's inquiry, Qingming did not directly make any requests, but politely asked him to sit down. Hisha hesitated for a while, and finally sat opposite Qingming. But when he heard Qingming's next sentence, he immediately jumped up in shock and said repeatedly, "Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly just now, what did you say?" Seeing him like this, Qingming stretched out his hand and pressed down, with the attitude of a little adult, and said, Hey, don't get excited, you didn't hear it wrong. I want the puppet secret technique passed down in your family." However, before Qingming finished speaking, Hisha refused excitedly, "Impossible. Absolutely impossible." "Really?" Qingming replied in a calm tone, but turned his head to look at Kainai, who was unconscious on the side, and the threat was self-evident. Seeing this, Hisha's face turned blue and red, but he still insisted, "The puppet secret technique is the foundation of our clan, and it is impossible to give it to you. Even if you threaten me with Kainai, it will be useless." Hearing this, Qingming looked thoughtful, and tapped the armrest with his index finger. The sound of da-da-da echoed in the room, as if every tap was hitting Hisha's heart. His heartbeat fluctuated with the rhythm of the tapping of his index finger, and he was wrapped in a huge pressure, making him almost unable to breathe. At a certain moment, Qingming suddenly stopped tapping, and Hisha's heart also stopped beating for a few seconds. Before he could recover, he heard Qingming say, "Let's do this. I don't want anything else, just a knowledge about the condensation, differentiation and manipulation of chakra threads." Hearing this, Hisha wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Qingming's wave of his hand. He only heard him say coldly, "This is my bottom line, don't try to bargain." Hisha heard the determination in Qingming's tone, and knew that if he refused again, he would definitely not end well. So, after a struggle, he nodded and agreed, "Okay." He did not mention any conditions such as letting Kainai leave, because he knew that was impossible. In this way, Qingming and Hisha reached a cooperation, and Kainai was sent back by him. Chapter 114 Surprise. In a flash, another week has passed. After half a month of tug-of-war, Konoha finally managed to recapture the two frontline strongholds 5 days ago. But this also shows Konoha's weakness from the side, otherwise it would not have taken so long. Therefore, the Sand Village has recently strengthened its infiltration work. Even Qingming found an opportunity to capture 2 Sand Village Chunins alive and expanded his chakra battery pack to 40,000 points. According to the 80% conversion rate, that is 32,000 points, which is 5,600 points more than the previous 26,400 points. These extra chakras, plus the 8,800 points of chakra previously allocated to the fire style, Phoenix Fire Technique, a total of 14,400 points of chakra, were allocated by Qingming to the magic, shackle technique and illusion, Sharingan. During the previous battle, he felt that the level of these two illusions was a bit low and could not keep up with his pace. So, of course, these chakras were used by him to practice these two illusions. With the investment of a large amount of chakra, the effect is immediate. Before, the proficiency of these two illusions could only be improved by 10 points per day, but now, it has become almost 100 points. Therefore, 20 days ago, his magic, Jagan Jutsu was only level 3, 715/1000, and now it has become level 4, 393/2000. This is because the investment time is still short, otherwise the progress will be faster. An illusion, Sharingan. Its proficiency was only level 3, 280/1000, 20 days ago, and now it has reached level 3, 958/1000, basically reaching the edge of promotion. Speaking of promotion, Qingming can't help but think of the skill of chakra control. Since he got the knowledge of condensation, differentiation and manipulation of chakra threads from Hisha a week ago, he used it in the practice of chakra control. How to say it? As expected of the puppet secret technique inherited from the second-generation Kazakage Shimon, the ancestor of puppet masters, its effect is outstanding. Originally, as the blessing of the double Magatama Sharingan was ineffective, his progress in practicing chakra control had slowed down. But as he applied the knowledge he got from Kirosha to the practice of chakra control, his speed became faster again, even faster than before. Now, he gains 15 points of proficiency almost every day. Therefore, in just 1 week, his proficiency has reached LV3, 915, 1000, and it will take only 5 or 6 days to advance. In addition, there is the reflection heart technique. After nearly 20 days of practice, he has also reached the edge of advancement, and now his proficiency has reached LV5, 4932, 5000. Basically he will be promoted today. Thanks to this, the evolution of his Sharingan has also greatly improved. Qingming opened the panel and glanced at it. He saw that in the blood column, the evolution of the Sharingan had reached double Magatama, 1772, 5000. In 20 days, he increased his proficiency by nearly 1,000 points. This speed was much faster than the initial speed. And this was not the limit. When he trained the reflection of the heart technique to level 6, the speed would be further improved. Qingming did it as soon as he thought of it. He immediately closed the panel and started a new round of practice. However, he did not practice the reflection of the heart technique directly, but first practiced the Genjutsu, Sharingan. This technique only needed 42 points of proficiency to be promoted. Qingming planned to upgrade it to level 4 first, a quarter of an hour later. When Qingming performed the Genjutsu, Sharingan for the 42nd time, a hint of enlightenment emerged in his mind, which made his understanding of this technique rise to a higher level. This time, it was not only the speed of seal formation and the improvement of the power of illusion, but he could also use this technique to complete some more sophisticated operations. For example, reading memory. That's right, reading memory. Now, he can take advantage of the moment when the target loses his mind and cast the Genjutsu Sharingan, making the target involuntarily recall some specific images, thus achieving an effect similar to reading memory. However, this function can only be said to be better than nothing for him now. There is no other reason he can't use it now. If it was a week ago, he might be excited for a while. After all, he was worried about how to get the puppet secret technique from Kainai and Hisha at that time. If he could read the memory directly, there would be no need to force Hisha to cooperate, and he could just dig out the relevant knowledge from his mind. Now, his goal has been achieved, and there is no need to read the memory again. Forget it. It's better to have it than not. With a low sigh, Qingming stopped thinking about it and turned to the reflection of the heart technique. This technique is only 68 points away from proficiency to advance, and Qingming is looking forward to its effect after it is promoted to level 6. Time passed by minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. After performing the art of reflecting the heart again, Qingming felt his mind cleared up, and a new feeling came to his mind. Without opening the panel, Qingming knew that his art of reflecting the heart had been upgraded. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that his spirit attribute had actually increased a little. That's right, his spirit attribute, along with the art of reflecting the heart upgraded to level 6, 10,000, suddenly increased a little, from 11 to 12. After a moment, Qingming opened his eyes, and a touch of surprise flashed in his eyes, but followed by confusion. Before, he only thought that the physique attribute would increase with the upgrade of other skills, but he never thought that the spirit attribute would also increase. What made me have this fixed mindset? Qingming thought in his heart. Soon, he had the answer in his mind, perhaps because his spirit attribute has always been in the leading position. He had always been thinking about how to make the physique attribute catch up with his spirit, but he forgot that long-term hard practice would also accumulate spiritual foundation. This time, it was the promotion of the reflection of the heart technique that leveraged these foundations, which allowed his spirit attribute to increase a little on the basis of 11 points. And this little improvement in the spirit attribute will also give him a chance to increase his chakra limit, which has been stagnant for several days. Unfortunately, limited by the lower physique attribute, this little spiritual attribute can only increase his chakra limit by about 4,000 points at most. Now, his chakra limit is 14,500 points. After this time, it will be about 18,000–19,000 points, which is close to the level of 2 cards. There is also the chakra recovery amount, which was 10,000 points before, and this time it should be able to increase by 2,000 points to the level of 12,000. In other words, he will have 2,000 more chakra points available every day in the future. As for where to use it, he will have to test the effect of the LV6 reflection of the heart technique before. With this thought, Qingming calmed down, raised his hands again, and performed the art of reflecting the heart. The next moment, a strong sense of stimulation came. The special chakra generated in Qingming's brain rose sharply. In the blink of an eye, it changed from a trickle to a long river. After all these chakras poured into his eyes, Qingming felt that his Sharingan was like a tonic pill, and it evolved rapidly. A minute later, the effect of the art of reflecting the heart disappeared. Qingming opened the panel to check the evolution of his Sharingan. At just one glance, he was stunned. It was nothing, the evolution of his Sharingan actually increased by a point. In other words, every point of proficiency improvement in the level 6 art of reflecting the heart can prompt his Sharingan to improve its evolution by a point. This speed is simply amazing. Chapter 115 Silent Resistance. Qingming once again looked at the bloodline column, Sharingan, double Magatama, 1796, 5000. According to the current proficiency of reflection of the heart technique, 1 point of Sharingan's evolution degree is added. Next, He only needs to brush up 3,204 points of reflection of the heart technique proficiency to evolve the Sharingan into 3 Magatama. And now, the chakra he allocates to reflection of the heart technique every day can allow him to gain 137 points of proficiency. In other words, it only takes about 23 days for his Sharingan to evolve. In this way, even if the past week is added, it will only take about a month in total, which is much faster than the 3 months calculated before. With this thought, Qingming's mood, which had just calmed down, became agitated again. He stood up, walked around the room a few times, took a few deep breaths, and then he regained his calm, and then began to practice non-stop. As for the extra 2,000 chakra points, is there any need to ask? Of course, it was allocated to reflection of the heart technique. Although the time point for his Sharingan to evolve to 3 Magatama has been greatly advanced as the reflection of the heart technique has been upgraded to level 6, this does not mean that Qingming does not want to continue to shorten this time. In this case, of course, these chakras must be used in the reflection of the heart technique. In this way, his reflection of the heart technique will be able to gain 150 points of proficiency every day, and it will only take about 21 days to evolve the Sharingan. In a flash, another 3 days have passed. At noon that day, Qingming suddenly received a notice that the rotating team would arrive in the afternoon, and they were asked to prepare for the handover. After the handover, they could return to the base camp. After that, there would be a week to rest. Qingming secretly calculated and found that they had been carrying out patrol missions here for almost a month. No wonder they gave a week to rest. Ninjas are also human beings. Even if they are on the battlefield, they should have time to relax, otherwise problems will arise sooner or later. However, Qingming did not plan to return to the base camp. He would continue to stay here and practice with the help of those chakra batteries. So, in the afternoon, when no one was around, he quietly performed the shadow clone technique and created a shadow clone. After ordering it to continue patrolling, he went to the underground cave. Considering that he could not appear openly for the next week, he could not practice the fire style, great fireball technique and fire style, dragon fire technique, which were ninjutsu with a lot of noise. So, he used all the 1,300 chakra points originally allocated to the 2 ninjutsu on the reflection of the heart technique. In this way, the proficiency of his reflection of the heart technique will increase to 158 points per day. However, his idea was good, but some people did not cooperate. Qingming took his hand away from Sheffin with a gloomy face, tore off the tape on his face, and asked, "Do you really want to die?" Although his tone was calm, anyone could hear the murderous intent in it. However, facing his questioning, Sheffin said nothing, just looked at him expressionlessly, without any fear in his eyes. After staring at each other for a moment, Qingming suddenly said, "Good, you are very good." After that, he sealed the other person's mouth again, walked towards the second person, and in the other person's slightly evasive eyes, he performed the chakra absorption technique. Soon, his palm moved away, just like Sheffin just now. The chakra he extracted was only half of the past. That's right, the reason why he showed his killing intention just now was because the chakra he extracted from Sheffin's body was only half of the previous one. This is not that Sheffin can resist his chakra absorption technique, but that the other party did not actively refine chakra in the past day, which resulted in only naturally restored chakra in his body. And these chakras are almost half of his peak state. In this case, the chakra he can extract is naturally only half of the past. And this will inevitably slow down his pace. If this is placed in a fantasy cultivation novel, it is a vengeance that blocks the way. In this case, how can he not be angry? Especially this second person is also the same, his anger has almost reached the extreme. Qingming activated his Sharingan fiercely and looked at the other 7 people. Including Kurosa, the chakra in the bodies of all of them was only about half of the original. Obviously, they had colluded and none of them refined chakra. But, how did they collude? Qingming was puzzled, and immediately said nothing. He walked to the guy who looked the most guilty in 3 or 2 steps, and used the Genjutsu Sharingan in his eyes. Originally, he thought that the mind-reading ability of this technique would not be used in a short time, but now it seems that he thought too much. Look, it is used now. Sure enough, the old saying is good, more skills are better. Retracting his thoughts, Qingming stopped thinking about it and began to concentrate on guiding the other party's emotions to make him recall the whole process of collusion. It was a little unskilled for the first time, but the power of the Sharingan made up for it. Soon, he figured out the whole story. It turned out that it was not that someone bypassed the restrictions of the seal and used some kind of ninjutsu to contact everyone. Instead, these people have been together for a long time, and they have made up a set of simple codes with their eyes and small movements of their bodies. It was through these codes that they completed the connection and finally decided to stop refining chakra. As for why they dared to do this? Of course, it was because they saw that Qingming needed chakra very much, so he would definitely not kill them directly unless it was absolutely necessary. Therefore, they dared to test. After sorting out these, Qingming sneered at everyone and said, "Okay, you are good." After saying that, he turned and left. Returning to the room opened by the shadow clone, Qingming pondered for a long time, suddenly opened the panel, and looked at the chakra absorption technique. After more than 20 days, its proficiency has reached LV4, 461/2000. Qingming calculated a little and concluded that if he wanted to upgrade it to LV5, it would take more than 35,000 chakra points. Now, he can restore 12,000 chakra points every day, and the chakra obtained from the 9 sand ninjas is halved, about 16,000 points. This adds up to 28,000 points, and 35,000 points can be collected in less than 2 days. Let's do it, Qingming made up his mind and stopped hesitating. He started to work on the chakra absorption technique. You know, the so-called chakra is actually a mixture of spiritual energy and physical energy. Since the chakra absorption technique can absorb chakra, then theoretically speaking, it should also be able to directly absorb the spiritual energy and physical energy of the human body. He can't do it now, most likely because the level of the chakra absorption technique is too low. In this case, what else is there to say? Just work hard. The other party thought that he could disgust him by not refining chakra, but he didn't know what he was about to face. Today is over. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Surrender and Trump Card. The next day. At night. Deep in the cave. Qingming walked in with a blank expression, his body revealing a sense of exhaustion from inside to outside. Seeing this scene, the sand ninjas became more confident. Not only were they not afraid at all, but they began to examine Qingming. The mockery in their eyes was not concealed at all. They seemed to use this method to declare their victory. But they will never know that the fish on the chopping board, no matter how much it jumps, will only be slaughtered in the end. Or rather, they actually know, but they just don't want to think about it, so they can only numb themselves in this way. Seeing the performance of these people, Qingming forced himself to cheer up and sneered, "You seem very proud? Do you really think I can't do anything to you?" Hearing this, for some reason, all the sand ninjas shuddered involuntarily, and the fear caused by Qingming's torture in the past once again surfaced in their hearts. He taking in the expressions of everyone, Qingming sneered again. Then, he flashed and came directly in front of Sheffin. The Jonin was not frightened by his words, and his expression did not change much. However, this was just an appearance. Qingming could clearly sense that as he approached, the other party's heartbeat speed increased a little. Bear with it, it's my first time too. Qingming said this with a sense of humor, and began to make a seal. Sheffin was originally confused by Qingming's words, but when he saw the seal made by Qingming, he was relieved. He was very familiar with this ninjutsu. The other party used this technique to extract their chakra in the past month. It was no big deal. However, he was too happy too early. When Qingming put his hand on his head and his chakra began to drain, he could still remain calm. But when the chakra in his body was drained away and Qingming began to forcibly extract his mental and physical energy, he finally couldn't keep calm, his eyes widened, and he struggled. Unfortunately, his struggle was weak and Qingming didn't notice it at all. At this moment, he was immersed in the pleasure of absorbing other people's mental and physical energy. This feeling is very strange, indescribably comfortable. After a moment, Qingming came back to his senses and quickly stopped the performance of the chakra absorption technique. Looking at Sheffin again at this time, his skin was pale, his cheeks were thin, and his breath was weak, just like a weak person who had just recovered from a serious illness. Obviously, forcibly extracting spiritual energy and physical energy will directly hurt a target. After that, even if Sheffin recovers, His body may not be able to recover to the previous level, and his strength will most likely drop a level. However, what does this have to do with him? It was originally just a tool for supplying chakra. If the other party cooperates, it's fine. If not, don't blame him for being ruthless. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind. After Qingming fed the other party a few Binglian pills, he returned to the room and began to summarize the test results just now. First of all, after the chakra absorption technique was upgraded to level 5, both the speed of absorbing chakra and the conversion rate were improved. Especially the former, which doubled directly on the original basis, from 500 points per second to 1000 points per second. Although this efficiency is still not as good as Samedhota's sword that drains the chakra of the Jinchuriki in a few seconds, it is better than most ninjutsu that can absorb chakra. As for the latter, as expected, it has increased by another 10 percentage points, and now it can convert 90% of the absorbed chakra into its own chakra. This means that he can get more chakra by absorbing the same amount of chakra. For example, he can absorb 40,000 chakra from 9 Sans ninjas. The conversion rate of 80% is 32,000 points, and 90% is 36,000 points. In other words, he has 4,000 more chakra to use every day. And he has also thought about the use of these chakras, which is to continue to invest in the practice of reflection of the heart. In this way, under normal circumstances, the proficiency of his reflection of the heart can be increased from 150 points to 175 points every day. The time it takes for the Sharingan to evolve into 3 Magatama will also be shortened from 21 days to 18 days. As for the opponent's confrontation, not actively refining chakra. Sorry, this option no longer exists. As he expected, when the chakra absorption technique was upgraded to level 5, he had the ability to directly extract the target's spiritual and physical energy. However, due to the need for 2 hands, the conversion rate would drop by 1 level, to about 75%. However, the wool comes from the sheep, and Qingming doesn't care about the increase in the loss rate. Anyway, he calculated based on the 40,000 chakra points that the 9 opponents could provide before, and he had to extract 36,000 points every day. As long as he couldn't reach this number, he would extract the opponent's spiritual and physical energy without hesitation. There is no doubt that this process is painful. If they don't want to suffer, then they should extract chakra as much as possible. Qingming believes that the other party will make the right choice. Sure enough, in just 3 days, the 9 Sans ninjas all surrendered and began to actively extract chakra to cooperate with Qingming's extraction. But because of the resistance in the past few days, they were more or less injured, so that they could not supply enough chakra. Qingming didn't waste words and immediately extracted their spiritual and physical energy to make up for the missing part. This made their bodies weaker and weaker. The weaker their bodies were, the less they could supply sufficient chakra, and the more spiritual and physical energy Qingming extracted. This was simply an unsolvable cycle. If it continued, their bodies would only become weaker and weaker. Qingming was happy to see this happen. Because only in this way would they not cause any trouble. In a flash, the vacation was over, and Qingming returned to Area E11 again. Next to the base. In a training ground. Qingming glanced around and saw that there was no one nearby, so he suddenly raised his left hand. As if cooperating with a non-existent person, he quickly formed the 6 seals of Zi Yin Su Zhou Mao Yin. Then, he opened his mouth and spit out dozens or hundreds of fireballs, successfully performing the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique. That's right, Qingming successfully performed the ninjutsu by forming seals with one hand. As he expected, when he had perfected the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique to level 5/0/0, he was only a little short of the chakra control to be able to perform this technique with one hand. Now, this shortcoming has been made up, and he has achieved this naturally. As for how this shortcoming was made up, Qingming opened the panel and took a glance, only to see that his chakra control had been upgraded from level 3, 915 1000, to level 4, 26, 2000. Obviously, it was this level upgrade that made up for his lack of chakra control. In the future, not only the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, but other ninjutsu of the same level, as long as he has perfected it, can be performed in this way. There is no doubt that this will become his new trump card. Chapter 117 Second Attribute. Flutter flutter, a sound of flapping wings was heard. A colorful parrot fell from the sky and landed on the shoulder of a Konoha chunin, and then whispered something in his ear. Then, The Konoha Chunin turned to a young ninja next to him, who was about 11 or 12 years old, and said, "Captain, Zyoba said the enemy is ahead." The boy was none other than Qingming, and the Konoha Chunin who spoke was none other than his subordinate, Kamijao Yoichi. As for Zyoba, he was naturally the parrot. In addition, there were two other people in the field, a Konoha Chunin who was about 16 or 17 years old, and a Konoha Jinan who had just graduated from the ninja school. That's right, they had just graduated. Looking back to last year, after their class graduated, they had more than 2 months of buffer period, and it was not until the end of January that they followed the support troops and rushed to the battlefield of the Land of Rain. And this time, Qingming calculated the time. It had been 10 days since the last vacation, and it was almost late October now. In other words, they came to the battlefield almost as soon as they graduated. From this, we can see how short of manpower Konoha is. However, this move of sending newcomers to the battlefield cannot reverse this situation. Because their strength is too low and their number is too small, they can't affect the overall situation at all. They have no meaning except being cannon fodder. Just like the guy named Simuteng in front of him, after only one battle, the Chunin teacher and 2 teammates were all killed. It is precisely because of this that he joined his team alone, or in other words, he was transferred to him by the base camp. Glancing at the other party's nervous face, Qingming didn't say much, but asked Kamijao Yoichi directly, "What is the number of enemies?" "Is it 4, this time? They came here to track a sand ninja team. Just now, the parrot went out to scout the enemy." Hearing Qingming's question, Kamijao Yoichi immediately looked at the parrot, and the parrot nodded at him. Seeing this, Qingming stopped talking nonsense and immediately said, "I will lead the charge. Kamijao Yoichi, you will be the rear guard. Simuteng, Harusheng, you two will be in the middle. Pay attention to the movements on both sides." "Yes, Captain." X3 The 3 people responded in unison. "Very good, let's go." After that, Qingming took the lead and ran forward. Simuteng and Harusheng walked side by side, followed closely behind, scanning both sides with sharp eyes, and Kamijao Yoichi walked at the end of the team. A few minutes later, everyone arrived near the destination. According to Zyoba, the 4 opponents were hiding in the woods ahead. Qingming asked the team to slow down and approach carefully. At first, everything went smoothly. But when they approached within 30 meters of the target, Simuteng accidentally triggered the trap set by the opponent. Whoosh, 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 several kunai shot from the side. Seeing that Simuteng was about to die on the spot, Qingming threw 3 kunai in an instant, using the force to hit the opponent, and intercepted all the flying kunai in the air. Only then did Simuteng react and said, "I'm sorry." However, Qingming ignored him and just looked ahead with a serious expression. Deep in the forest, through the gaps between the trees, Qingming could vaguely see 4 sand ninjas looking here. Obviously, they had already noticed the movement here. Seeing this, Qingming knew it would be difficult to approach the other party quietly. So, without hesitation, he quickly raised his hands, completed the seal, and performed the ninjutsu, wind style, great breakthrough. That's right, it was wind style. After these days of study, he has developed a second chakra attribute and has upgraded the wind style, great breakthrough to level 2, 125 out of 500. As for where the chakra came from? It's simple. In the past 10 days, he secretly captured 2 sand-style chunins and obtained an additional supply of 6,000 chakra points. It was with these chakras that he was able to get started with a wind style, great breakthrough and upgrade it to level 2 in just a few days. Although the level is still a bit low, wind style, great breakthrough is a ninjutsu whose power is strongly related to the amount of chakra injected by the caster. Therefore, with a huge chakra, Qingming can easily make it work with amazing results. He opened his mouth and spit out a whirlwind, and as he continued to move forward, the scope of the impact became wider and wider. When he arrived at the place where the sand ninjas were hiding, everything within 100 meters had been cleared. In this way, the trap set by the sand ninjas no longer existed. And this is also one of Qingming's goals. Judging from Simuteng's experience, there are definitely many traps set by the opponent nearby. Although Qingming is confident that he can avoid these traps, there is really no need to launch an attack on the battlefield set by the opponent. So, he chose to clear the field. After a dozen breaths, the dust settled. In the field, Kamijao Yoichi and others stood behind Qingming, and not far away from them were 4 sand ninjas, 1 man and 3 women. However, they now look a little embarrassed. The leading sand ninja swept his eyes over Kamijo Yoichi and others, and finally fixed on Qingming, and said with a serious expression, "Uchiha Qingming." Hearing this, Qingming was slightly stunned, thinking that he was so famous that he was recognized at a glance. Is it because of the last big fight? Qingming was puzzled. The last time the sand ninja launched a surprise attack, he killed 9 of the opponents alone, and finally withstood the attack of a sand village ninja for half an hour. In this way, it is normal to be the focus of the sand village. In fact, it is not just that. Qingming seems to have forgotten that there are 11 sand ninjas imprisoned in his underground cave. You know, in Konoha, these people have escaped back, but only the sand village knows that these people are all missing. And the common point of these people before they disappeared is that they have been to Area E11. In this way, plus those sand ninjas that Qingming cannot secretly capture and can only kill, there are more sand ninjas who are missing here. Although there were more than just Qingming's team patrolling in the E11 area, he was undoubtedly one of the most noteworthy people as he had the strength to compete with the Jonin. The sand ninjas who were carrying out a mission of lurking and infiltration were very concerned about this information. Therefore, they recognized his identity at a glance. Although Qingming had not thought of this for the time being, it did not prevent him from taking action. After secretly making a gesture to several teammates, Qingming suddenly raised his hands and was about to make a seal. At the same time, the Sharingan in his pupils was fully activated, and the 3 Magatama rotated rapidly, as if preparing to cast some illusion. Seeing this scene, the leading sand ninja hurriedly shouted, "Don't look into his eyes." Hearing this, the other 3 sand ninjas immediately looked away. However, Qingming only made a feint and did not cast any illusion. He only made a way seal with his raised hands. The next moment, the flash body technique was activated, and his speed suddenly increased. Looking at Qingming, who came to him in an instant, Huangsha knew that he had been deceived, and immediately drew the long sword behind him and was about to chop Qingming. However, just as the opponent's long sword was swung out, Qingming had already predicted his next move. So, before the long sword fell, Qingming had already avoided it in advance. Just at this moment, a sand ninja looked over, as if ready to help. However, it was this glance that allowed Qingming to seize the opportunity, and the hypnotic ability of the Sharingan was instantly exerted to the limit. The sand ninja was immediately hid and the whole person froze in place. At this time, Qingming flipped his palm, a shuriken appeared in his palm, and then he threw it out. Punchy, the sound of a sharp blade entering the flesh sounded. The shuriken accurately pierced the throat of the sand ninja and took his life. In just a moment, the sand ninja lost one person. There will be another update in the evening. Chapter 118 Easy Solution. Dao. Because Qingming's action was too fast, the other sand ninjas didn't react until Tanamura Dao fell. Not to mention them, even Kamijo Yoichi and others who received the order in advance just reacted. Fortunately, they were somewhat mentally prepared, so after being surprised for a moment, they immediately followed Qingming's instructions before rushing towards the remaining 2 sand ninjas. As for Huangsha, the leader, he was left to Qingming. Looking at Qingming in front of him, Huangsha didn't dare to be distracted at all, and could only let the 3 people on Qingming's side besiege his 2 subordinates. Fortunately, among the 3 Konoha ninjas, there was a very young Jinan whose combat power could be ignored, so there was no need to worry about the 2 subordinates not being able to hold on for the time being. Now, the most important thing is to deal with the Uchiha ninja in front of him. Ding ding dang gang in the field, the sound of kunai colliding came from time to time, and Qingming and Huangsha didn't move. They just stood there and looked at each other. Although Qingming's expression was indifferent, it could be seen from the action of standing that he was still relatively relaxed. On the contrary, Huangsha held a long sword, his muscles tensed, and he looked very nervous. There was no way. Although it was just a short fight, he already knew that Qingming was not easy to deal with, and he had to be very alert. Therefore, he dared not relax at all. And this would inevitably put him under great psychological pressure. A little bit of sweat emerged from Huangsha's forehead, and then slowly gathered to form a larger sweat bead, which slid along his eyebrows. Finally, it dripped into the corner of his eye. Then, a sour feeling came, and Huangsha couldn't help blinking his eyes. And at this moment, Qingming made a move. Swish, 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 3 shurikens flew out and shot directly at Huangsha's throat, heart and lower abdomen. However, Huangsha's reaction was not slow. The longsword in his hand slashed diagonally, and instantly cut off the shuriken that attacked his throat. Then, his figure flashed and avoided the attack of the other two shurikens. However, he lost the initiative after all. Therefore, before he could stand firm, Qingming had already come close to him, and the dagger on his waist appeared in his hand. Swoosh! The blade cut through the air and slashed towards Huangshi's neck. Feeling the chill from the blade, Huangshi raised his sword to block without hesitation. However, as soon as he made a move, he felt his head sink, and a strong sense of sleepiness came over him, making him want to take a nap. At the same time, a pair of blood-red eyes gradually occupied his vision. Is this Sharingan? Under the influence of hypnosis, Huangshi's thinking speed slowed down a lot, but the sword that was about to hide him kept him clear-headed. Coupled with a fighting instinct honed between life and death, he made the most correct choice at the critical moment. It was seen that at the moment when the blade was approaching, he suddenly gave up blocking and made a movement of leaning back with all his strength. This move not only allowed him to avoid the attack of the dagger, but also avoided Qingming's sight. It was because of this that he got a chance to breathe. Huangshi bit his tongue, and the intense pain came over him, clearing his mind and completely getting rid of the hypnotic influence of the Sharingan. But at this moment, a flash of cold light appeared, and Qingming held a short sword in his hand and swung it straight at Huangshi's chest. At the critical moment, Huangshi raised the sword across his chest, and then there was a ding sound, and the short sword chopped on the long sword. Because Huangshi blocked too hastily, his feet were unstable and he retreated several steps. Taking this opportunity, Qingming stepped forward again, and the short sword in his hand stabbed straight out, hitting Huangshi's heart. However, Huangshi can carry a long sword with him, so his swordsmanship is naturally not bad. No, to be more precise, it should be very good, because he is good at swordsmanship, so he was awarded the title of Special Ninja. Therefore, when Qingming stabbed with his sword, Huangshi was not panicked at all, and easily swung the sword to block it. After that, Qingming stabbed several swords in succession, all of which were blocked by him one by one. Qingming was delighted to see the prey, so he simply stopped using the Sharingan and simply used swordsmanship to fight the enemy. For a while, the sound of ding-dong rang in the field, and as the fight progressed, Huangshi's tense expression also relaxed a little. Obviously, after entering the field he was good at, his confidence returned. However, he didn't know that Qingming, who was fighting back and forth with him, didn't use his full strength at all. The opponent's swordsmanship level was probably equivalent to his level 4 proficiency of practicing Konoha-style swordsmanship alone. This is already considered a great swordsmanship among ordinary people, but in Qingming's eyes, it is not good enough. After the test, Qingming's curiosity was satisfied, and he decided to end this boring battle. With this thought in mind, Qingming suddenly said, "The warm-up is over, and next, the battle officially begins." What? Huangshi didn't understand, but a strong sense of uneasiness emerged in his heart. He immediately looked away and only observed Qingming's movements with his peripheral vision, but this uneasiness became even stronger. The next moment, he felt that the short sword in Qingming's hand became extremely flexible, and the swordsmanship also changed from the previous standard to strange and tricky. Almost every sword was stuck in the blind spot of his vision, making it extremely difficult for him to defend. Of course, after all, it was a head-on battle. As long as he turned his eyes back and fought Qingming face to face, the difficulty could be reduced by more than 90%. But, did he dare to turn his eyes back? The answer was obviously no. With the ability of the Sharingan that Qingming just showed, if he dared to turn his eyes back, he would be hit in a minute. And this is the characteristic of Uchiha-style swordsmanship. It will give full play to the advantages of the Sharingan when fighting the enemy, and defeat the enemy with skills. Of course, if the pupil power of the Sharingan is not strong enough, or the swordsmanship is not practiced well, it is definitely impossible to achieve the level of Qingming. At this moment, Huangshi felt extremely uncomfortable. The swordsmanship he was good at could not be used in front of Qingming at all, and the long sword in his hand was useless except for passive blocking. Even so, not every sword could be blocked. In less than 2 minutes. Since Qingming had used all his strength, he had already had several more scars on his body. This can't go on, Huangshi thought to himself. The next moment, despite being scratched by Qingming on his waist, he jumped back several times and forcibly distanced himself. Then, he raised his hands to perform some ninjutsu. However, his movements were too obvious. Almost at the moment he retreated, Qingming performed the instant body technique and followed him. So, as soon as he stood still, Qingming appeared in front of him. Then, His hands were like butterflies flying through flowers. In front of Huangsha's astonished eyes, he completed the seals in an instant and performed the magic, jail hanging technique. The next moment, a severe pain came, and Huangsha felt as if his body was pierced half by several giant iron nails. His hands were raised in the air, unable to move. The sound of a sharp blade piercing the flesh rang out. Huangsha felt a pain in his heart, and glanced down from the corner of his eye, only to see a dagger had been inserted into his chest. Huangsha made a series of meaningless sounds and soon lost his breath. Seeing this, Qingming muttered, "It is indeed a perfect illusion. It is very convenient to use, that's right." After these days of practice, his magic illusion, jail hang technique has been upgraded from LV4, 393/2000, to LV5, 00. It is precisely because of this that he was able to seize the brief opportunity and successfully perform this technique, thus winning the game in one fell swoop. Chapter 119 Tempering. Seeing Huangsha being killed by Qingming, the other two sand ninjas in the field immediately panicked and turned to flee. But at this moment, several shurikens flew out from Qingming's hands, blocking their retreat. As a last resort, they could only continue to fight with Kamijiao Yoichi and others who were chasing them. But Qingming was right next to them, so how could they feel at ease? Although he didn't seem to have any intention of taking action at the moment, just standing there was also a great deterrent. Under such pressure, even if they were strong, they could not exert 60% to 70%. So, in a short period of time, they suffered serious injuries. At the moment of life and death, they could no longer care about Qingming on the side, and began to use their own methods to deal with Kamijiao Yoichi and others. As the saying goes, even rabbits bite when they are anxious, let alone two strong sand ninjas. So, after the two sand hidden ninjas fought hard, Kamijiao Yoichi and others immediately fell into trouble. Especially Simuteng, although the other party had experienced a life-and-death battle, the enemy that time was mainly dealing with his Chunin teacher. This was the first time for him to fight such a brutal enemy head-on. Before, it was okay because he had teammates to help him and he was not in danger. But now, after the enemy fought desperately, the murderous intent alone was enough to make him tremble, not to mention that the enemy was deliberately targeting him, as if trying to open a gap from him. This put more pressure on him, and he almost died in the enemy's surprise attack several times. For a moment, he wanted to turn around and run away. However, when he caught a glimpse of Qingming standing quietly not far away, this idea instantly disappeared. If he became a deserter at this time, even if Qingming killed him, the village would not say anything. What's more, with Qingming in charge, the enemy could still turn the tables. As long as he could hold on for this period of time, I believe the captain would not watch him die without saving him. After all, the captain had just saved him once not long ago. Thinking of this, Simuteng suddenly felt confident, and his steps were not as flustered as before. At the same time, he began to try his best to recall everything he learned in the ninja school, as well as the knowledge that the Chunin teacher briefly taught him, and tried to apply them to the current battle as much as possible. So, as time went by, his battle became more and more methodical. Although he still looked craftsmanlike, at least with the support of his two teammates, he stabilized the situation. Seeing this scene, Qingming nodded secretly. The reason why he didn't take action was that he didn't want his teammates to rely too much on him. Although he didn't expect these teammates to share the pressure for him, he didn't want them to drag him down during the battle. Especially Simuteng, who had too little combat experience and had to be well honed. I have to admit that the battlefield is the best teacher. Without being taught, under great pressure, he naturally learned how to fight. After that, as long as he made up for the skills, he would be a qualified Jinan. I'm afraid that the Konoha high-level officials are thinking this way. As for the Jinan who died because of this, it was not within their consideration. Qingming shook his head, stopped thinking about it, and focused on watching the battle. Simuteng was right. Although he intended to train his subordinates, he didn't want them to die. Time passed by, and the battle in the field became fierce. Whether it was Kamijiao Yoichi and his three men or the two sand ninjas, they were all standing on the edge of the sword at this moment. No one dared to take a step back, because there was an abyss behind this step. It's almost done, Qingming muttered. Then, with a flash body technique, he appeared directly in front of Simuteng, and then swung his sword to block the attack of a sand ninja just in time. Huh? Looking at Qingming who suddenly appeared in front of him, the sand ninja was stunned. However, When he saw Qingming's blood-red Sharingan, he immediately came to his senses and wanted to look away. However, it was too late. The Sharingan in Qingming's pupils rotated rapidly, and the hypnotic ability was fully activated. The Sand Ninja felt his head sink, and a strong sense of sleepiness came over him, so he couldn't help but close his eyes. The next moment, the sharp blade cut across his throat, causing him to fall into permanent sleep. Seeing this, another Sand Ninja was horrified and could no longer care about Kamijo Yoichi in front of him. He wanted to turn around and leave immediately. But he could just run away. Why did he look at Qingming? It was this look that gave Qingming the opportunity, and the Genjutsu Sharingan was activated instantly, pulling the opponent into the illusion. Taking this opportunity, Kamijo Yoichi stabbed the kunai in his hand and pierced the opponent's heart. At this time, Qingming lifted the illusion. Although his Genjutsu Sharingan has not reached the perfect state of LV5, 0/0, like the magic Sharingan, it is about to enter LV5. Because of this, he can seize the fleeting opportunity and instantly perform this technique to pull the opponent into the illusion. Of course, whether it is the previous magic Sharingan or the current Genjutsu Sharingan, it can play such a good effect. In the final analysis, it is because his Sharingan is about to evolve to 3 Magatama. Otherwise, even if he is proficient in these two illusions, it will be useless if his pupil power is not enough. Qingming opened the panel and took a look. Sharingan, double Magatama, 4915, 5000. Obviously, after tonight, his Sharingan will evolve into 3 Magatama. Calculating the time, it is almost exactly 18 days, which is almost the same as the time he calculated. When the Sharingan evolves, his physique and spiritual attributes will inevitably be further improved, and his potential will also be raised accordingly. In this way, the upper limit of chakra will also be further increased on the original basis. And now, he has not yet fully tapped the potential brought by the increase of spiritual attribute when the reflection of the heart technique broke through LV6 last time, and it will be increased again soon. Qingming feels that he will not have to worry about insufficient potential for some time in the future. Captain, huh? Kamijo Yoichi's voice brought Qingming's thoughts back to reality. Captain, I have checked in, all 4 Sand Ninjas are dead, Kamijo Yoichi reported. This is a necessary procedure after the battle to ensure that the enemy is not faking his death. Hearing this, Qingming nodded and was about to ask them to clean up the battlefield, but after seeing their injuries, he changed the subject and said, "Come here first." Hearing his call, Simuteng and Shun Jingsheng limped over from a distance. Qingming didn't waste any words and asked them to show their wounds directly, and then began to perform the healing technique to heal their wounds. After so many days, his healing technique finally reached level 3, and the healing effect on external injuries was greatly increased. The injuries suffered by Kamijo Yoichi and others were mostly external injuries, so they were quickly healed by Qingming. Of course, Qingming's work was not in vain, and his healing technique gained nearly 20 points of proficiency during this period. Obviously, practical operation is much more efficient than pure brushing, and of course it consumes more chakra. However, in order to return to the base as soon as possible and start the final sprint, Qingming used this chakra. Chapter 123 Magatama. That night, in the underground cave, in the room opened by the shadow clone, Qingming sat cross-legged, silently practicing the Genjutsu Sharingan. As for the follow-up of the day's events, he left it all to the shadow clone. Now, he just wanted to upgrade the Genjutsu Sharingan to level 5, and then immediately start practicing the reflection of the heart technique. His Sharingan has been stuck at the double Magatama for several months, and it's time to evolve it to 3 Magatama. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Suddenly, Qingming opened his eyes, raised his hands, and completed the seal in an instant, casting the Genjutsu Sharingan. However, although he was fast, it still took time. With a sigh, Qingming put down his hands and muttered, "Level 5 is really not the end." That's right, unlike the magic Sharingan, his Genjutsu Sharingan can still be upgraded after reaching level 5. Although this is not a bad thing, Qingming is still a little disappointed. He had expected that after he was promoted to level 5, he could skip the step of making hand seals and reach the level of Uchiha Qingming, who could perform the Genjutsu Sharingan with just a few gestures. And this was also the realm that could be achieved on the scroll that the Uchiha Jonin gave him. Now it seems that he still hasn't practiced it to the fullest. Fortunately, with the proficiency panel, he doesn't have to worry about never reaching that realm. It's just a matter of working harder for a while. As for today, forget it. Qingming couldn't wait to practice the reflection heart technique. However, before practicing, he still had to replenish the chakra in his body, otherwise it would affect his rhythm if he ran out of chakra in the middle of the practice. With this thought in mind, Qingming walked out of the room and came to the depths of the cave. At this time, there were 11 sand ninjas imprisoned here. Among these people, only the 2 who were captured recently were still in good spirits. The previous 9 people were in a bad state because he frequently extracted their spiritual and physical energy. They were listless and looked extremely weak. Qingming estimated that it would not be long before these people would be disabled. However, Qingming did not care much about this, because he could not stay here for too long. Not to mention whether the headquarters would allow him to stay in the second line after he awakened the 3 Magatama Sharingan. Just for the sake of fairness, those who stayed in the second line for a long time would be sent to the front line for rotation. Qingming calculated the time a little bit, and at most in half a month, he would have to go to the front line, and then he would not be as comfortable as he is now. Of course, this comfort is only in his eyes, and others would not think so. Let alone Qingming's own teammates, except for Kamijo Yoichi who persisted longer. The other 2 would be replaced every 10 days or half a month on average. Even so, every time they encountered an enemy, Qingming would deal with the difficult enemy. If it were other teams, they would be wiped out if they were not careful. If not, why did those sand ninjas lurk here one after another? Wasn't it to destroy the living force of Konoha? It was just that Qingming was too strong, which made the sand ninja in this area look helpless. Overall, Konoha actually suffered greater losses. He shook his head secretly and put these thoughts behind him. Qingming flashed and came in front of Kainai, and in the numb eyes of the other party, he performed the chakra absorption technique. At the beginning, absorbing chakra was nothing. But when Qingming began to extract the other party's spiritual energy and physical energy to make up for the deficiency, he showed a look of pain. However, Qingming turned a blind eye to his pain. It was not that Qingming had no empathy, but that this war would last for about a year, and the more time passed, the more cruel the battlefield environment would be. If Qingming did not want to die on the battlefield, he could only be cruel and do everything possible to enhance his own strength. A woman's kindness would only kill himself. Qingming would not be so unwise. After a few breaths, Qingming retracted his palm, then came to the second person with an expressionless face and performed the chakra absorption technique again. In this way, after Qingming absorbed the chakra of 4 people, he finally replenished the chakra in his body to its peak state. Next, it's time to work hard. With this thought, Qingming quickly returned to the room and began to practice the reflection of the heart technique. Time passed by minute, and Qingming performed the reflection of the heart technique over and over again, feeling the nourishment of the special chakra in his brain on the Sharingan. Finally, 2.5 hours later, when Qingming performed the reflection of the heart technique for the 85th time, when the special chakra once again flowed into his eyes, the quantitative change caused a qualitative change. A black jade quietly appeared in his blood-red pupils, forming a perfect 120-degree angle with the other 2 jades. At this point, his Sharingan successfully evolved into a 3 Magatama Sharingan. At this moment, Qingming only felt that the image quality in front of him changed from 4K Ultra High Definition to 8K Ultra High Definition, and everything in his field of vision became clearer. In addition, when he concentrated, everything in front of him became slower. In this way, when fighting with others, he will have more time to think and react. With this item alone, his strength has increased by at least 20% to 30%. This is not counting the basic attributes that have increased due to the Sharingan's advancement. That's right, this time his Sharingan has evolved from 2 Magatama to 3 Magatama, and the spiritual attribute and physique attribute have increased by 2 points and 1 point respectively. Just looking at the numbers, this increase seems to be no different from the previous 2 times. But again, the further the attribute points are, the greater the gap between each point. Therefore, the improvement of the basic attributes this time is far from comparable to the previous 2 times. Qingming estimates that this time his chakra limit can be increased by at least 10,000 points, which is twice as much as the last 5,000 points. When all this potential is fully tapped, his chakra amount will increase to about 30,000 points, which is the level of 3 cards. By then, he can also be called a Chijanla. However, there is still a certain gap from the target Chitanla. Even so, It is more than 99% of ninjas. From this, we can understand why the Uchiha ninjas who opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan can all get the title of Jonin. It is not because of the reputation of the wealthy family, but because of their strength. Others may not have such a big improvement, but as long as they awaken the 3 Magatama Sharingan, the chakra amount will exceed 10,000 points. With such a chakra amount, coupled with the ability of the Sharingan, the Jonins with ordinary strength are simply not their opponents. Therefore, it is well deserved to get the title of Jonin. Similarly, it won't be long before he will become a Jonin. However, these are all false names. Qingming actually values the improvement of strength. In addition to the increase in the upper limit of chakra, the improvement of basic attributes this time will also increase his chakra recovery speed. Qingming estimates that after this time, his daily chakra recovery will increase by about 5,000 points. In other words, the chakra he can use every day in the future will reach 17,000 points. In this way, even if he has to give up this stronghold, he will not be too distressed. Chapter 121 Plan. Retracting his thoughts, Qingming adjusted to the new Sharingan for a while, then silently said, "Panel." The next moment, the familiar light blue light screen appeared. Name, Uchiha Qingming. Age, 11 years old. Constitution, 1011. Spirit, 1214. Chakra, 3750, 1,450,017,380. Bloodline, Sharingan, 3 Magatama, 1/10000. Skills, Chakra Refining Technique, LV4, 1089, 2000, LV4, 1449, 2000. Fire Style, Great Fireball Technique, LV2, 125 out of 500, LV3, 425/1000. Fire Style, Dragon Fire Technique, LV2, 118 out of 500, LV3, 418/1000. Wind Style, Great Breakthrough, LV2, 310/500. Shadow Clone Technique, LV1, 15 out of 200, LV1, 40/200. Chakra Absorption Technique, LV5, 1/5000, LV5, 300/5000. Healing Technique, LV2, 224/500, LV3, 35/1000. Illusion, Sharingan, LV5, 1/5000. Heart Reflection Technique, LV6, 1/10000, LV6, 3175/10000. Sword Technique, LV5, 190/5000, LV5, 490/5000. Chakra Control, LV3, 915/1000, LV4, 146/2000. 3 Body Technique, LV3, 0/0. Instant Body Technique, LV4, 0/0. Ninja Tool Throwing, LV5, 0/0. Fire Style, House of Fire Technique, LV5, 0/0. Magic, Shackle Technique, LV5, 0/0. It can be seen that after his Sharingan evolved to 3 Magatama, it can still be improved, but this progress bar is a full 10,000 points. Seeing this number, Qingming's heart couldn't help but stop for a moment. However, he soon calmed down. The most urgent thing is to determine how much effect of the heart reflection technique is left. With this thought, Qingming immediately raised his hand to form a seal and cast the heart reflection technique. Familiar chakra was born from his brain and then poured into his eyes. Qingming could still feel his Sharingan evolving, but the speed was obviously slower. Sure enough, 1 minute later, the effect of the heart reflection technique ended. Qingming looked at the bloodline column and found that the evolution of the Sharingan had not changed at all. Qingming was not discouraged and immediately started the second cast. The familiar feeling came again. After the effect of the second heart reflection technique ended, Qingming looked at the panel again. I saw that in the blood column, the progress bar behind the 3 Magatama Sharingan changed from 1/10000 to 2/10000, and it moved forward a little. In other words, performing the reflection heart technique twice can increase the evolution of his Sharingan a little. Although the effect is reduced by half compared to before, it is still within an acceptable range. After confirming this, Qingming breathed a sigh of relief. He was afraid that the effect of the reflection heart technique would be reduced too much, resulting in the time for the Sharingan to evolve into a Mangekyo to be infinitely extended. In that case, Some of his ideas would not be realized. Now it seems that the situation is not bad. With a thought, Qingming tried another way to improve the evolution of the Sharingan, that is, to open the eyes and waste time. However, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and a full hour passed, and he didn't feel any movement. Although this method used to take 5 hours to gain a little proficiency, and the efficiency was very low, he could still feel the progress in the process. But now, he didn't feel anything at all. Could it be, Qingming suddenly had an idea in his mind? Then, he started to waste time again. After another hour, he still felt nothing. At this point, Qingming was basically sure that after the Sharingan evolved to 3 Magatama, this method of wasting time was ineffective. In other words, the efficiency was so low that it could be ignored. No wonder there are so many 3 Magatama Sharingans in the Uchiha clan, but only a few have evolved to the Mangekyo level. It turns out that the efficiency is too low. Qingming estimated that the efficiency of gaining a point of evolution in the previous 5 hours was the speed at which the lower-level Uchiha ninjas evolved on their own, without being mentally stimulated. The current state of near stagnation is the situation faced by most Uchiha Jonin. Perhaps their situation will be better than Qingming's, but it is definitely not much better. Awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan requires extremely high qualifications. As long as the qualifications do not meet the requirements, even if they can continue to evolve now, they will eventually get stuck at a certain progress. Then, there is their limit. Qingming is different. Maybe his aptitude is not very good, but with a proficiency panel, the catalysis of the reflection of the heart technique, and the supply of chakra, he has no limit. Maybe he can't be like those geniuses. With a little stimulation, the progress bar of the Sharingan will squeeze up. But every step he takes must be the most stable. Nodding secretly, Qingming stopped struggling and turned to think about what abilities he would gain after his Sharingan evolved into a Mangekyo. You know, the Sharingan is called the pupil of the soul. The abilities that can be obtained after opening the Mangekyo Sharingan will be strongly related to one's own experience and the most real desire in the heart. Since crossing over, he has used the sword the most, and the ultimate goal is to transcend this world. Will my awakened ability be related to these two aspects? Qingming thought in his heart. But after thinking for a long time, there was no answer. Simply, he stopped thinking about it. When the time comes, he will naturally know. There is no need to waste that brain cell now. Taking his eyes away from the Sharingan, Qingming looked at the fire style, Great Fireball technique and the fire style, Dragon Fire technique. Thanks to the foundation laid by the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, the improvement speed of these two skills was very fast. In less than a month, they went from the initial level 2 to level 3, and the proficiency of both skills was nearly half. However, as they rose to level 3, the growth rate of proficiency also slowed down a little. Before, at level 2, one spell could gain 4-5 points of proficiency, but now it has become 3-4 points. However, in general, the progress is still good. In addition to these two fire-style ninjutsu, the other one worth mentioning is the wind-style, Great Breakthrough. As the latest wind-style ninjutsu, with Qingming's great investment, it broke through level 0 and level 1 in a few days and reached level 2, 310/500. There are two reasons why Qingming invested so much. One is that he lacks the means of large-scale attack, and this technique can make up for it to a certain extent. Secondly, he wanted to use this technique to master the changes in the form and nature of wind-attributed chakra, and then lay the foundation for practicing the wind-style Rasen. That's right. Qingming planned to intercept Uzumaki Naruto's invention and create the wind-style Rasen in advance. As an S-level ninjutsu, its attack power is unquestionable, and Qingming just lacks this kind of strong attack method. Coincidentally, he also knows how to practice this technique. In this case, why not practice it? As for the protagonist? Sorry, there is no protagonist here. Of course, knowing is one thing, and whether you can practice it is another. You know, the starting point of this technique is an A-level ninjutsu. The Rasengan looks simple, but it is not so easy to practice. Even Naruto took a whole week to get started by taking shortcuts, and Minato Namikaze and Jiraiya, who created it, spent 3 years on and off. This shows how difficult it is. Fortunately, Qingming has a proficiency panel, so he can work hard. Moreover, the greatest difficulty of this technique lies in the ultimate control of chakra, and it just so happens that his chakra control has reached level 4, and is still progressing steadily. With all these, Qingming is fully confident that he can create this ninjutsu. Chapter 122 Distribution and Progress. Restraining the urge to try, Qingming began to think about the next chakra allocation problem. Now, his Sharingan has evolved into 3 Magatama, and the skill list on the panel has also changed significantly. It's time to readjust the chakra allocation. Qingming calculated the chakra he can use every day. First, he can recover it himself, which is about 17,000 points. Secondly, there are the 9 sand ninjas he captured earlier. They can provide a total of 40,000 chakras, and the conversion rate of 90% is 36,000 points. Finally, there are the 2 sand ninjas he captured a few days ago. If he drains them, Qingming can get 6,000 chakras. So, add them together, it is 59,000 points. After thinking for a while, Qingming decided to use 32,000 points of it to practice the reflection of the heart technique, so that its proficiency will increase by 200 points every day. And every 2 times of reflection of the heart technique can make his Sharingan gain a little progress, and 200 times is 100 points of progress. According to this calculation, it only takes 100 days, or a little over 3 months, for his Sharingan to evolve into a Meijekyo Sharingan. This time is not short, but it is not long either. Especially compared to opening the Meijekyo, this time is even more insignificant. How many people want this opportunity, but they don't have it yet? However, Qingming also knew that he couldn't stay here for such a long time, so this calculation result can only be used as a reference. In addition, he also plans to use 2,000 points of chakra in the fire style, Great Fireball technique, and the fire style, Dragon Fire technique. With a foundation laid by the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, these chakras can allow them to gain 50 points of proficiency every day. In this way, they can be promoted to level 4 in about 11 days, and the effect will be further enhanced. In addition, there is the Wind style, Great Breakthrough. Considering its unique function, Qingming plans to invest 5,000 points of chakra in it. In this way, it can gain 60 points of proficiency every day. It only takes 3 days to be promoted to level 3. Then, if he upgrades to the next level, he will be able to master the changes in the form and nature of wind-attributed chakra. By then, if he has mastered the Rasengan, he can try to combine it with Wind Escape to create an S-level ninjutsu, Wind Escape, Rasen Shuriken. However, Qingming estimated that this was still far away and would not consider it for the time being. At this time, there were still 20,000 points of chakra left. After a little thought, Qingming decided to use 16,000 of them on the practice of Jinjutsu, Sharingan. In this way, he can gain 200 points of proficiency every day, and it will only take about 25 days to break through LV5 and reach LV6. By then, with a 3 Magatama Sharingan, even if he does not prepare, it can be used instantly to pose a great threat to the senior ninja. As for the remaining 4,000 points of chakra, Qingming decided to use 1,000 points on healing technique and 500 points on chakra absorption technique. In this way, the former can gain 10 points of proficiency every day, and the latter can gain 20 points. Although not much, it's better than nothing. Anyway, these 2 skills are not very important. Another skill that is not so important is the shadow clone technique. Qingming does not intend to practice this technique deliberately, and plans to let it accumulate proficiency from daily use. In addition, the skills that have not yet been allocated chakra are chakra control and swordsmanship. However, the practice of these 2 skills requires more time than chakra, and a few hundred points a day are enough. In other words, he still has a lot of chakra left. And these chakras can be used in the Rasengan. So far, the chakra allocation has been completed. Next, just follow the steps and you'll be done. 3 days later. In the evening. In the underground cave. Qingming stared at the bumpy balloon in his hand with a serious expression. However, no matter how he looked at it, the balloon did not break. After a long time, Qingming sighed and stopped the input of chakra. Then, the balloon filled with water and his palm gradually returned to calm. Although Qingming knew that the Rasengan was not easy to practice, he was still a little anxious that it took 3 full days to reach the second stage. As we all know, the practice of the Rasengan is divided into 4 stages. The first stage requires gathering chakra in the palm of your hand. This step is not difficult for Qingming. His chakra control is already level 4, so he can do it easily. The second stage requires stable and continuous release of chakra. Qingming thought he could still do it easily, but he miscalculated. If it was just stable and continuous release of chakra, Qingming could do it. But the Rasengan also requires the ninja to control the released chakra and make it flow irregularly, which is not a simple matter. Qingming tried many times, but couldn't do much. As a last resort, he could only practice with a balloon filled with water according to the method Jiraiya set in his memory. For this purpose, he even specially separated a shadow clone and secretly went to a nearby town to buy a lot of balloons and balls. That's right, balloons and balls. The third stage of practicing the Rasengan is to replace the balloon with a leather ball. In this stage, the practice is to release chakra stably and efficiently. The leather ball is much stronger than the balloon. If you want to burst it, you must release enough chakra in a short time and control its flow. In this way, it will naturally have the effect of training. Once this step is completed, the Rasengan is considered to be successfully introduced. At this time, the Rasengan has a certain lethality. As for the fourth stage, it is an intensive training, which emphasizes combining all the previous things to achieve stable output and instant release. In this way, the Rasengan will have good penetration and attack power. However, this stage is still far away from him for the time being. Now the most important thing for him is to practice the second step well. After sorting out his mood, Qingming once again focused on the balloon in his palm and continued to practice the Rasengan. After an hour, when the chakra consumed reached the predetermined value, Qingming stopped practicing and began to work on the proficiency of the heart reflection technique and the illusion Sharingan. Qingming invested the most in these two skills, so naturally, the time required for practice was the longest. It took him nearly 7 hours to complete today's practice plan. At this time, it was already the second half of the night. Qingming yawned, performed the shadow clone technique, and created a shadow clone. After ordering it to guard those sand ninjas, he fell asleep. In fact, it is okay not to guard. After these days of extraction, the 11 sand ninjas were already too weak to escape. However, just in case, Qingming would still create a shadow clone to monitor every time he rested. Qingming pays attention to safety when doing things. Even if there is a 1 in 10,000 chance, he doesn't want to gamble. As the saying goes, if you don't gamble, you won't lose. Qingming will not ask for trouble. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect that the chapters that were scheduled to be released before have been released. I almost stopped updating today. Sorry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Mission. It is indeed 3 Magatama. Your name is Uchiha Qingming, right? Very good, very good. In a tent at the base camp, an Uchiha Jonin looked into Qingming's eyes and said excitedly. At this time, 10 days had passed since Qingming opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan, and his reputation as an Uchiha genius gradually spread. Therefore, on the first day when he returned to the base camp, the Uchiha clan sent a Jonin to confirm it. Qingming also knew this Jonin. It was the Uchiha Jonin who gave him the Uchiha-style sword technique and the skills to use the Sharingan after he exposed his Sharingan. Haha, the other party laughed twice and said excitedly, our Uchiha clan has produced 2 geniuses at once, which is really a cause for celebration, too. Hearing this, Qingming showed a hint of doubt at the right time. Seeing this, the Uchiha Jonin was stunned for a moment, then quickly reacted and said, oh, by the way, you have been on the western defense line for some time. It is normal that you don't know. In the north, a boy named Uchiha Shisu also opened the 3 Magatama Sharingan not long ago. Speaking of this, he seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly said, I remember that boy came to the battlefield with you, right? Do you know him? It's him. Qingming was calm, but his face showed surprise, and said, he also opened the 3 Magatama. Haha, as if he was very satisfied with Qingming's reaction, the Uchiha Jonin patted his shoulder and said with a smile, now you know, there are always people who are better than you. That boy, tisk tisk. The Uchiha Jonin shook his head, his tone suddenly became extremely complicated, and he sighed, that boy is incredible. Qingming could understand his complicated feelings. After all, anyone who sees a kid much younger than himself grow up to the same level as himself will inevitably feel a sense of frustration that he is so old but still lives like a dog. Well, maybe this is also due to my frustration. For a moment, Qingming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After a long silence, The Uchiha Jonin spoke again. Since you have awakened the 3 Magatama Sharingan, the promotion to Jonin should be put on the agenda. You don't need to worry about the rest, just prepare well these days, and I guess I will assign you a task that is not easy at that time. Assessment task, Qingming asked. Well, I guess so, the Uchiha Jonin nodded and said, although in theory, only 3 other Jonins need to jointly recommend someone to become a Jonin. But in general, the village will arrange a task for testing to ensure that the person being recommended has the ability of a Jonin. So, you can also regard this task as a Jonin assessment, is that so? After a pause, Qingming suddenly said seriously, thank you for your advice, uncle. Hearing this, the Uchiha Jonin waved his hand and said, what's there to thank me for? The task will be given in 3 to 5 days at the shortest, and 7 to 8 days at the longest. You should prepare well, I see, uncle, Qingming replied. Well, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. With that, the Uchiha Jonin turned and walked out. Seeing this, Qingming hurriedly said, I'll see you off. After sending the Uchiha Jonin out of the tent, Qingming stopped and pondered for a long time as he watched the other persons gradually disappearing back. After a long while, he came back to his senses and returned to the tent. Without any hesitation, he immediately performed the shadow clone technique and created a shadow clone to stay here instead of himself. He quietly left the base camp and went to the western defense line. That's right, this time on the vacation, he did not send a shadow clone to fool around, but returned to the base camp in person. The reason for doing this was to consider the attention that the 3 Magatama Sharingan might attract. As expected, the Uchiha clan directly sent a Jonin to verify. Although the Sharingan cannot see through the shadow clone, the Sharingan that the shadow clone itself manifested is a huge flaw. It's okay for a short contact, but if it lasts for a long time, the Uchiha Jonin who also has the 3 Magatama Sharingan may notice something unusual. So, just in case, he still came back here in person, and finally did not reveal any flaws. Now that the matter has been completed, it's time for him to return to the underground cave to deal with the beginning and the end. A few hours later, Qingming returned to the familiar underground cave. It can be predicted that he will not be able to come here again for a long time. In this case, the 11 sand ninjas imprisoned in the depths cannot be kept. Of course, it does not mean that they must be dealt with immediately. Now there are still a few days before the mission is issued, and he can completely extract chakra for a few more days. It is not easy to collect so many chakra batteries, so they cannot be wasted, and they must be used to the fullest. Based on this, Qingming increased the intensity of chakra extraction in the next few days, and the chakra obtained was nearly 30% more. However, because of this, the vitality of those sand ninjas is rapidly lost. It is estimated that if it happens a few more times, they will die naturally without Qingming's direct action. In this regard, Qingming just took a look and ignored it. In a flash, a week passed quietly. At noon that day, Qingming was practicing the reflection of the heart technique, quietly feeling the changes in the Sharingan, and suddenly a memory came to his mind. Qingming frowned slightly and quickly browsed this part of the memory. After a moment, he opened his eyes and muttered, "Have you left the base camp?" "That's right. This memory is the memory of the shadow clone who stayed at the base camp. The other party has received the mission at this time, and has left the base camp and is rushing to the mission location. Of course, this is on the surface. In fact, not long after the shadow clone left, he took the initiative to cancel the shadow clone technique and pass the relevant memories to him. Next, he was the one who actually carried out the mission. Go to the land of Earth, collect relevant information about the war between the Hidden Rock Village and the Hidden Cloud Village, record the losses of both sides, especially the losses of the Hidden Rock Village, and provide reference for the base camp to formulate a counterattack plan." Qingming murmured in his mouth, repeating the mission requirements, with a slightly weird expression. Counterattack? Are you kidding? If he remembered correctly, this battle seemed to be that the Hidden Cloud Village caught the Hidden Rock Village off guard, and rushed all the way, almost hitting the door of the Hidden Rock Village. But in fact, the Hidden Rock Village had already obtained the information. And now it is just luring the enemy deep into the country. I'm afraid Inoki has already mobilized a large army to encircle the elite Kumagakure led by the third Raikage. If his butterfly wings did not affect that side, the third Raikage would be forced to fight for his life and fight against 10,000 Iwagakure ninjas to cover the retreat of the elite Kumagakure. However, the elite Kumagakure evacuated, but the third Raikage stayed forever. Affected by this, the morale of the Kumagakure village plummeted. On the contrary, after the third Raikage was killed, the morale of the Iwagakure ninjas soared, and soon launched a large-scale attack on the front line. In this situation, still counterattack? It will be good if we can withstand the offensive of the Iwagakure village next. Qingming shook his head, no longer thinking about it, and turned to deal with the sand ninjas deep in the cave. Chapter 124 Arrival. A few minutes later, Qingming returned to the room opened by the shadow clone. He had already dealt with the sand ninjas imprisoned in the depths of the cave. However, he did not rush to leave, but opened the panel to check the gains of these days. The first was the Genjutsu, Sharingan. Because he had been squeezing it hard these days, he got 30% more chakra than before. And all these chakras were invested in the practice of the Genjutsu, Sharingan, which eventually allowed him to break through LV5 and advance to LV6 a week ahead of schedule. Just as he expected, after being promoted to LV6, even if he was not well prepared, his Genjutsu, Sharingan could still exert its impressive power once it was used. In this way, with the help of LV5 swordsmanship, ordinary Jonins would feel a lot of pressure against him. And if he was given enough preparation time to release the power of the Genjutsu, Sharingan, even if he was a Jonin, he would have to die obediently after being hit. Unfortunately, with the combat experience and reaction speed of the Jonin, it is basically unlikely to give him this opportunity, unless he can upgrade the Genjutsu, Sharingan to level 7 and reach the realm of releasing illusions with a single move. Otherwise, it is difficult to complete the instant kill of the Jonin. Even so, it can only deal with Jonin of average level. If facing the elite among the Jonin, at least he must upgrade the Sharingan to the Mangekyo level and strengthen the power of illusions to achieve instant kills. However, by then, he can use many methods, and he doesn't have to worry about a mere Genjutsu, Sharingan. Now, most of the mid-level and low-level ninjas are no longer his opponents. Unless they attack together, they can't pose any threat to him at all. Retracting his thoughts, Qingming cast his eyes on the fire style, Great Fireball technique and the fire style, Dragon Fire technique. A week ago, their proficiency had reached the peak of level 3. In the past week, in order to upgrade them to level 4, he went out specifically and found a deserted place to practice. After being promoted to level 4, as expected, their power was further enhanced. However, correspondingly, the legacy left by the fire style, Phoenix Fire technique was almost exhausted. Now, the proficiency that can be increased by each ninjutsu has been reduced to 1-2 points. Therefore, it is not easy to practice these two ninjutsu to the level of level 5-0-0, especially without the chakra battery. Fortunately, these two ninjutsu are just a supplement to him and do not affect the overall situation. Therefore, Qingming temporarily postponed the idea of upgrading their levels. Qingming moved his eyes down and saw the LV3, 410/1000, Wind Style, Great Breakthrough. Originally, its proficiency should be higher, but in the past week, he really had no time and no opportunity to practice this technique. Therefore, the proficiency of this technique stopped at the level of a week ago. However, he did not waste the saved chakra. Qingming flipped his palm, and strands of chakra gathered in his palm. After a while, it condensed into a chakra ball visible to the naked eye. That's right, he used all the chakra in the practice of Rasengan, and then successfully got started with it. Apart from other things, in terms of the difficulty of getting started, Rasengan is the most difficult skill he has learned. Even the reflection heart technique that consumes the most chakra, its entry probably consumes less than 20,000 chakras. And Rasengan? Qingming secretly calculated it, at least 65,000 points. What does this mean? If these chakras are used in fire style, Great Fireball, even without the blessing of fire style, Phoenix Fire technique, it can be directly upgraded from LV0 to LV3. From this, you can see how difficult it is to get started with Rasengan. So, this technique is not suitable for people with too little chakra to practice. Unless you have the comprehension of Konoha, you can understand the key points by yourself with just Naruto's simple demonstration and 1 or 2 mouth skills. Otherwise, you can only slowly hone your proficiency. And this requires a huge amount of chakra support, which ordinary ninjas simply cannot afford. Although Qingming used so much chakra, it is not worth mentioning compared to Naruto. Naruto's consumption is the difficulty for ordinary people to learn this technique. Although Qingming is not a very good comprehension, he has the help of the proficiency panel, and he will have new insights every time he tries. Therefore, It cannot be regarded as the standard of ordinary people. Retracting his thoughts, Qingming no longer thought about it. With a thought, he dispersed the Rasengan in his hand. Although his Rasengan has been introduced, the condensation speed and degree of solidity are very ordinary, and it cannot be used in actual combat for the time being. Fortunately, after getting started, it will be faster to grind proficiency. As long as the Rasengan is kept from dispersing, proficiency can be continuously obtained. Otherwise, he really doesn't know how long it will take to grind it to the proficiency that can be integrated into the wind escape chakra. With a sigh of relief, Qingming finally cast his eyes on the bloodline column and the chakra column. For the former, after the continuous catalysis of the reflection heart technique, the evolution of the 3 Magatama Sharingan has reached 1702, 10,000. For the latter, after these days of accumulation, its upper limit has increased from 17,380 to 19,828. Nearly 20,000 points of chakra made Qingming feel safe. After closing the panel, Qingming took a last look at the room opened by the shadow clone, and then left without looking back. 3 days later. Land of Earth. Northwest of the Hidden Rock Village, about 200 kilometers away, Qingming stood on a rock, looking at the battle in the valley below. His expression did not change at all. It can be seen that on the battlefield below, although the Hidden Rock Ninja has more people, they are on the defensive, while the Hidden Cloud Ninja has fewer people, but they are on the offensive. The reason for this is that in addition to the elites from the Hidden Cloud Village, there is also the reason why the third Raikage is charging in the front. If he was alone, the Rock Ninja would have to send out more than 3 Jonin to deal with him. Even so, the third Raikage would find opportunities from time to time to kill or seriously injure one of them. Looking at the third Raikage, who was covered in lightning and as fast as lightning, Qingming frowned slightly, secretly calculating how likely he would be to win if he faced him. After thinking for a long time, Qingming came to the answer, that is, there was no chance of winning. With the defensive power of the opponent's lightning armor, he had no means to break the defense. And with the speed that the opponent was currently showing, his illusion could not hit the opponent. In other words, during the battle, he could only passively take the beating. Considering the power of the opponent's hell stab, he certainly could not go head-on, so he had to dodge. And with his current speed, even with the help of the Sharingan, he could not hide for too long. So, after all the calculations, he had no chance of winning. Sure enough, there is still a big gap between me and these top strong men in the ninja world. Muttering, Qingming released the shadow clone technique, and his figure turned into a ball of chakra, carrying everything he had just seen, and returned to his original body. Chapter 125 Fishing in Troubled Waters. A few kilometers away from the battlefield, Qingming occupied a rock bear's cave and was practicing cross-legged inside. He used the heart reflection technique over and over again, stimulating the brain to produce that special chakra, which in turn prompted the Sharingan to evolve. After a moment, Qingming opened his eyes, sighed, and shook his head, saying, "Oh, it's too slow." Without the extra chakra supplied by the chakra battery, the only chakra he could use every day was the 17,000 points that he could restore, and his practice speed suddenly slowed down. Even though he had suspended the practice of other skills and used most of his chakra on the heart reflection technique, he could still only gain half of his previous proficiency, about 100 points. And this, converted into the evolution of the Sharingan, is about 50 points. In this way, he needs at least 165 days, more than 5 months, to evolve the Sharingan from 3 Magatama, 1702, 10,000, to the Mangekyo. During this period, his other skills will be forced to stagnate. This was obviously unacceptable to Qingming. What should I do? Just as Qingming was thinking, a stream of chakra flowed into his body along with a mysterious connection, and along with it came the memory of the shadow clone. Qingming closed his eyes, carefully flipped through these memories, and soon figured out the situation on the battlefield. And this is also the main purpose of the shadow clone technique developed by the second Hokage, Senju Tabirima, that is, reconnaissance and exploration. Being in the enemy's territory, Qingming naturally did not dare to be careless, so he only sent out the shadow clone for reconnaissance, and the other party also completed the task he assigned very well. After absorbing the memory of the shadow clone, although Qingming felt a little frustrated about the gap between himself and the third Raikage, he also keenly realized that this was a good opportunity to fish in troubled waters. Now the Cloud Ninja and the Rock Ninja are fighting fiercely, attracting the attention of many forces in the ninja world, And there are definitely many hidden players like him around. If these people can be captured and turned into chakra batteries, then the chakra he needs for practice will no longer be a problem. The more Qingming thought about it, the more he felt that this method was feasible. Even if they are in the enemy's territory, these chakra batteries are destined to not last for a long time, but even if they are only used for one day, it is still a profit. With this thought, Qingming walked out of the cave and began to circle the battlefield, searching for traces of other hidden players. What? You mean the mission? Please. Isn't there a shadow clone? Qingming nodded at the shadow clone that had just been separated beside him. The shadow clone understood and immediately rushed to the direction of the battlefield, while Qingming continued to search for traces of other ninjas. However, the ninjas who can be sent to perform such tasks are basically very capable. Therefore, it took nearly 3 hours for Qingming to find a suspicious target. Although the other party was dressed as a Iwagakure, he did the same thing as his shadow clone, secretly observing the battle on the distant battlefield. From this, Qingming concluded that the other party must be an imposter. Of course, it doesn't matter if he is not, as long as he can provide him with chakra. His identity is not important. With this thought, Qingming was about to step forward. But he suddenly thought that if the other party was also using shadow clones to scout like him, wouldn't his move alert the enemy? And this was very likely to happen. No, we have to think of a foolproof plan. Qingming stepped back a few steps, hid himself, and began to think about countermeasures. After a long time, Qingming's eyes suddenly lit up and muttered, "This method should work." As he said that, he raised his hands and performed the transformation technique, turning himself into an Iwagakure. Then, he showed up and ran towards the suspicious Iwagakure from a distance. Before he got close, he shouted at the top of his voice, "The kid over there, the plan is about to start. Why don't you stay in your team and come here?" Qingming's inexplicable words almost burned the CPU of the Iwagakure in the distance. However, before the other party could react, Qingming suddenly stopped. After looking at the other person up and down for a few times, Qingming suddenly showed a look of horror on his face, and stammered, You are not one of us." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly ran away. Seeing this, the Iwa ninja did not bother to think about how he was exposed, but instinctively chased after him. Qingming was a little slower and was soon caught up. The Iwa ninja did not waste any words and directly chose to take action, trying to take down Qingming. Qingming naturally tried his best to resist. The two fought for a few minutes. Finally, Qingming found an opportunity and stabbed the kunai into the opponent's shoulder. Bang! A cloud of chakra smoke dispersed, and the figure in front of him disappeared. Then, the madness on Qingming's face disappeared, and he just murmured in a low voice, "Is it really a shadow clone?" Just as he worried, the other party was indeed a shadow clone. If he had acted rashly just now, he might have alerted the enemy now. As for why it is not alerting the enemy now, it is naturally the plan he mentioned. The next step is to see if the other party is fooled. Muttering, Qingming no longer thought about it. He flashed and left the place, carefully hiding nearby. A few minutes later, a figure wrapped in a black robe came quietly. He carefully inspected the traces in the field, as if he wanted to find the direction where Qingming left. Seeing this scene, Qingming knew that his plan was successful. The other party really couldn't resist the temptation and came to find out what this so-called plan was. As for the other party's suspicion of his identity, to be honest, if he didn't have a need for external chakra, he wouldn't have targeted other people who were also spies. Similarly, other people didn't have this need, so they naturally wouldn't think of this. After all, to a certain extent, these spies are also a group. In the absence of conflicts of interest, it is unlikely that they will attack each other. Therefore, the other party is unlikely to doubt his identity. And since there is no problem with his identity, the words he said inadvertently are very credible. In this way, Qingming is 80% sure that the other party will be interested in the plan he mentioned, and then follow this line to investigate. Sure enough, the opponent arrived not long after. Qingming didn't waste any words, and when he saw the opportunity, 3 shurikens flew out. The man in black robe was also alert, and he immediately dodged to the side when he sensed the danger. However, as soon as his feet landed on the ground, 3 more shurikens flew out. The man in black robe had no time to dodge, so he could only pull out his kunai to block. Ding ding ding, 3 crisp metal collision sounds were heard, and all 3 shurikens were knocked away. But at the same time, he also lost a chance to escape. Qingming flashed in front of the opponent, and without saying a word, he swung the dagger in his hand. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.